All right, we are live. Welcome. This is Orion Rising. I'm your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Show this out, show this out, show this out. Welcome, everybody. Okay, so we are live. We are going to be doing the Hermetica. So we are live for the Corpus Hermeticum. You can see Hermes right there on your screen. Let me take that overlay down here and show this out, show this out, show this out, show this out. Let me get that overlay off the screen there so you can see my ugly mug. There we go. All right, welcome. Make sure you share this out, please. Brooke, welcome. I love you. Hi, baby. We're going to do the Corpus Hermeticum, which is the oldest scrolls that are still in existence of the Hermetica, the Hermetic text. And it's actually part of it. It's not all of it. So we won't be covering the entire Hermetica. We'll be covering the Corpus Hermeticum, which is 17 books or 17 chapters, however you want to call that. You'll see that as we get going. We're going to use the book that you'll see the description when we do that. I'm going to let that play from this group. It's actually a book from, I think it's Cambridge University published it. You'll see that. So you'll see the visuals there, and I don't remember if I have the captions on. I'll turn the captions on as well. So they'll be showing page by page, flipping it through page by page, so you'll be able to read along with it. So they redid that. Denise, welcome. Penny, welcome. So share this out. So if you guys have not read any of the Hermetica, specifically the Corpus Hermeticum, which is actually Greek, you'll hear this description as we get going, and I didn't have time to work up the description and put it in the description for this show. There was a lot going on, and StreamYard has been, you could not log on to StreamYard on their website from any search engine for the last couple of days. They were down, so I couldn't get into the studio to do any work, and I was also working on changing the visuals to, for those of you listening on the MP4 broadcast. In fact, Instagram right now, for whatever reason, didn't go live. I don't know what happened with that. I used the stream key and it didn't go live. So I don't believe we're live on Instagram right now. I don't know if we are or not. I don't think we are. It's frozen on me over there. So I don't think we're live over there. But we are live on YouTube and on Facebook right now. But there's been a lot of problems with StreamYard in the last few days. Full moon did not do them good, right? So we are live, and you'll see that. So if you haven't read or anything, the Hermeticum, we're going to get into that, and we're going to move forward with that until we cover it. The whole thing. I'm going to do a lot of the Dead Sea Scrolls, probably at least the larger, like 15 or so that are well known, because there's a lot of scrolls. There's like 180 or something scrolls that they had found in the Dead Sea area. So we'll be covering a lot of those as we go, but I was going to start with the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. We'll do that second, I believe, and then we'll get into, we'll see on that. But the Emerald Tablets are attributed to Hermes, and the reasoning, if you read the bio that I took from Wikipedia that I clicked a link on for Facebook, and I'll sharing that out to Facebook. Thank you, Brooke, for also sharing that stuff out. Reese, welcome. So if you read that, you know that the story behind it is that we discovered the Emerald Tablets of Thoth at the foot, between the feet of the statue of Hermes buried in the ground. Hermes apparently had this Emerald Tablet, the Tablets of Thoth, and had used them and talked about them, and eventually wrote the Hermetic texts from the ideology. And there's a lot of people, Greeks and Egyptians alike, who believe that Hermes Trismegistus, which means 3 times great, Trismegistus, that Hermes was in fact the soul in the body of Hermes was Thoth the Atlantean, or Thoth, or Thoth the Atlantean, resurrected, because he had said that he will return. So there's a symbiotic relationship where people believe that they were the same soul. I also tend to believe that they may have been the same soul that came back in the body of Hermes. So I was going to start with the Emerald Tablets, then realized if I was going to do that, I needed to start with Hermes, because the only reason we have the Emerald Tablets is because Hermes had the only copy of the tablets, had the actual tablets, and they buried them at the foot between the feet of his statue. And eventually they were found, and I'm not exactly sure the date of that. I think they talk about it here at the beginning of this. So if I was going to jump straight to Thoth, we should cover Hermes, even though chronologically Thoth came first, then Hermes. However, the only reason that we know about Thoth is because of Hermes. So I decided to start with the Hermetica and then move, or at least the Corpus Hermeticum, and then move into the Emerald Tablets. And then we can get back into the Kybalion later and finish up the other books of the Kybalion after we do the Corpus Hermeticus part of that. Joanne, welcome. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this up into full screen over here. And let's pull this up into full screen, and we'll go ahead and do a sound check and make sure that you guys can hear it okay. And you're going to see he's going to literally open up the book and pull it out of the library here. And let me get myself off the screen and put it up in full screen here, the full screen layout in the studio as well. And then we'll do a sound check and see if you guys can hear it okay. And we'll just get started with the Corpus Hermeticus. So if you're not familiar with it, you'll become familiar with it quickly, because this is in the beginning of the book. Here, the narrator is going to give you a little bit of the background story. I just gave you a little tidbit. You could also read the Wikipedia link that I linked in the description. Not here in this description yet. I am going to put that in the description for the show for next week, for the podcast for part 2 of the Corpus Hermeticus. I just didn't have time, or Hermeticum. I just didn't have time to do it this week. So I apologize for that. Okay. So let's go ahead and do a sound check here and get started. So let me know if you guys can hear this. And make sure you share it out.
Hermetica, the Greek Corpus Hermeticum and the Latin Asclepius in a New English Translation. Translated by Brian P. Copenhaver. Read by Adam Hannon. Published in 1992 under copyright by Cambridge University Press. Reproduced with permission of the licensor through PLS Clear. For improved listenability, the footnotes have been excluded from this recording, and the symbols found in the visual text are explained in the description below. Also, due to licensing requirements, the 189 pages of notes and bibliography have been excluded, but are available in the hard copy edition of the book linked in the description below.
And there is going to be commercials. I don't know how many, but we'll just get through those like we did with the Law of One. Paulie, welcome. I didn't say hi to you, and I saw you pop in. So like I said, share this out, guys, and let's go ahead and let him continue to give you the description, and then we'll go right into the book, okay?
Lastly, the preface and introduction, spanning 48 pages, has been moved to the Master Key Society membership on Patreon. And now, the Corpus Hermeticum.
Egg, grocery, and gas prices are going up. But getting an exam and x-ray at the dentist? That's now...
And right on cue.
The Hermetica are a body of theological, philosophical texts written in late antiquity, but believed during the Renaissance, when they became well known, to be much older. Their supposed author, a mythical figure called Hermes Trismegistus, was thought to be a contemporary of Moses. The Hermetic philosophy was regarded as an ancient theology, parallel to the revealed wisdom of the Bible.
So Trismegistus means 3 times great, guys, just in case you were unaware of that word. Hermes was his name. Trismegistus, 3 times great, or thrice great, would be the exact translation into English, modern English. All right, let's continue.
Porting biblical revelation and culminating in the philosophy of Plato, Plotinus, and others in the Platonic tradition. This new translation is the only English version based on reliable texts of the Greek Corpus Hermeticum and the Latin Asclepius. Professor Copenhaver's introduction and notes provide a context of interpretation taking into account recent advances in Hermetic scholarship, making this accessible edition an indispensable resource to scholars in ancient philosophy and religion, early Christianity, Renaissance literature and history, the history of science, and the occultist tradition in which the Hermetica have become canonical texts.
So the Scopius is the Latin word. That's what they called it. It means Hermetica, so just so you know. Okay, and which means the study of Hermes or the Hermetic text. I forgot to say that right there. Cassie, welcome. All right, so let's go ahead and now we're going to get right into the Hermetica. And as you heard, this book is the only most reliable English translation of the Latin and the Greek. So they compiled both those scripts, both those books, both those scrolls, and compared them, so that when they translated into modern English, when they published this book, they actually made sure that there wasn't something lost in translation by reading the Greek and the Latin to make sure that they were getting the translation proper. So this is why I chose this text, because this version is the official English translation that is the most accurate to the Greek and the Roman Latin translations into English.
1. Discourse of Hermes Trismegistus and Poimandrus. Once, when thought came to me of the things that are, and my thinking soared high, and my bodily senses were restrained, like someone heavy with sleep from too much eating or toil of the body, an enormous being completely unbounded in size seemed to appear to me, and call my name, and say to me, "What do you want to hear and see? What do you want to learn and know from your understanding?" Who are
See, so here, this is kind of important to start this way. When those of you who are who work with me, who have worked with me, Stephanie, welcome. This is because we finished with Stephanie posed a question. Let me put it up on the screen and read it to you guys on the MP3 broadcast. She said, "Oh, what are we doing?" Since we finished with the Law of One, I'm moving on to another topic, and we are now going to be doing the Corpus Hermeticum. That's what we're actually on right now, and this is the beginning of that. So here you see that Hermes is stating that a great being with very, very large size and quite possibly infinite size is now saying to him, "What do you want to know?" So if you think back to Ra in the Law of One, Ra and is in the very beginning coming through Carla to Dawn and saying, ask questions. What do you want to know? If any of you out there who might be in the audience have worked with me personally, you'll know that I've frustrated you many times because I'm always saying, "What do you want to know? Ask me anything and I will answer." And the reason for that is that in this matrix and in this universe, there is free will, and even the creator of the universe. And I'm sure that hopefully I'm not buffing for you guys. I can see that my latency, my internet is dipped down right here. So hopefully that will come back and you guys aren't seeing me buff. But the way that the universe is set up is like a Q&A, that we can't give you something that you're not ready for. So we literally are always frustrating people by saying, "Ask me anything that you want to know, because I will give you the answers to it, but you have to freely ask the question of us." And you see here the very beginning of this book that came from the scroll of Hermes was, I met God basically, and God said, "What do you want to know?" Would ask me anything and I will tell you. Okay, so you literally have to realize that that's the way the universe works. It's the way God works. It's the way the Creator works. That it's an interface. And that's another reason why a lot of people are seeing that the correlation between AI or a computer and the mind of the creator, and that the universe seems to be sort of an AI device, if not some sort of computer device. And that's why it lends the conspiracy theories that, aliens are in charge and we're in some computer simulation, like The Matrix, the movies The Matrix, which is quickly becoming a religion around the world. that people are unaware of, and it might pop up to be that if it hasn't already. So you see here that Hermes is being addressed in a way that says, ask me what you want to know. So let's continue with this here.
Who are you? I asked. I am Poimandrus, he said, mind of sovereignty. I know what you want, and I am with you everywhere. I said, I wish to learn about the things that are, to understand their nature and to know God. How much I want to hear, I said. Then he said to me, keep in mind all that you wish to learn, and I will teach you. Saying this, he changed his appearance, and in an instant everything was immediately opened to me. I saw an endless vision in which everything became light, clear, and joyful, and in seeing the vision I came to love it. After a little while, darkness arose separately and descended, fearful and gloomy, coiled.
I just realized I did not have the closed captions on for some of you. You guys can see the screen, but some of you watching on a smaller device may not be able to see the words on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and remember to turn the closed captions on so that you guys can see the words. If that seems to bother people, then I'll see about turning it off. But I believe that those of you listening on the MP3 broadcast around the world, you can't see any of those visuals anyways. However, I've noticed that if I were on a smaller platform or on my cell phone, that book might appear a little small, and some people may have a problem reading the words from the book that's in the visual. So I'm going to go ahead and leave those. I just turned them on. I'm going to leave those on. All right, let's continue here.
Coiling sinuously so that it looked to me like a snake.
If you don't remember your childhood,
and of course, here's one of those commercials.
Which starseed are you?
When I pause or
then the darkness.
When I pause or change anything, a lot of times it defaults to a commercial. So I apologize that we're going to have to put up with the commercials, but I like this format that these guys have. This group, in fact, I should probably give them a little bit of a shout out, right? So yeah, I kind of like these guys. So I'll end up putting their page probably in the description when I work up a description for next week, so that you guys can actually look, because they have a bunch of other stuff that's not just the Hermetica, but they have a ton of the Kybalion. I think they cover the entire Kybalion, which I might be using unless they get mad at me. But we are, I'm not monetizing this, and we are going to be giving them credit. So we'll see if, the guys from the LL Research group allowed me to do that without any problems. These guys probably won't mind. We'll find out, because I didn't ask them permission. I'm just using it. They have it up from public for public to watch. So therefore I did it, right? We're working with that. Okay, let's continue here. Now I'll probably start go default to a commercial again. We'll see.
Changed into something of a watery nature, indescribably agitated and smoking like a fire. It produced an unspeakable wailing roar. Then an inarticulate cry, like the voice of fire, came forth from it. But
right, Stephanie said Greek mythology was not my favorite subject category in history. I actually, as a kid, I discovered the Native Americans, because I grew up here in the United States. So I went down their lore first. But then when I was in school, I learned about Alexander the Great, who was in fact Greek. And from that, I went straight down that rabbit hole of Greek mythology, and then started reading the Greek masters, all of all the works of everything that we have still left over, Aristotle and Socrates and everybody, all of that. So I went down the Greek path before I went anywhere else, and that's what led me in the philosophical thought or the mythological thought. It was down that path, and then I went and just covered the world, and also got into doing the same with religion, because in philosophy we're always taught. When I was in college in Philosophy 101, which was taught by a monk, literally dressed in the brown robe with the white rope around the waist, monk, the first thing that he said about philosophy was, besides the translation of philosophy, meaning the knowledge of love or the love of knowledge, was that you have to truly understand philosophical thought, you have to understand the person and the time that they lived. and the geopolitical ideology of the time and the religious ideology of the time to understand their thought process and why they wrote what they wrote. And so that was right up my alley as, looking at history, military history, written history, religious history, and mythology, and moving straight through all of that. So for me, that was where I started and then went out from there to the rest of the world. But everybody has their own path. Okay, let's continue.
The light, a holy word mounted upon the watery nature, and untempered fire leapt up from the watery nature to the height above. The fire was nimble and piercing and active as well. And because the air was light, it followed after spirit and rose up to the fire away from earth and water, so that it seemed suspended from the fire. Earth and water stayed behind, mixed with one another, so that earth could not be distinguished from water, but they were stirred to hear by the spiritual word that moved upon them. Poimandres said to me, "Have you understood what this vision means?" "I shall come to know," said I. "I am the light you saw, mind, your God," he said.
So Poimandra, I should have translated that in the beginning. That literally means the like the learned one, the teacher of man. And so it translates to that, where you have to remember that Jesus, when Jesus was here, said he was the Son of Man. So he would have been the Poimandres as well. So that word translates to that. So here you see Hermes, when Hermes asked, "Who are you?" Like when Moses said, "Who are you?" And God said, "I am that I am," which that is the same sort of translation for that meaning of that, depending on the subject matter of that, because of all the words, Greek words, Roman words, even the Sanskrit or Yiddish words, Hebrew words, are concepts back that far, 5,000, 6,000 years ago. They're concept words. So depending on which version of the concept word, how it applies, Poimandra would mean Lord Creator or Light of the World, or Creator of man, or learned one who is teacher, rabbi of man. So some people pick one and they use it like they did with when they use the word philosophy from the Greek, and they'll say that's the philosophical thought or philosophy is the teaching or the study of knowledge. And that's one meaning of it. So it's very simple and basic, but the true meaning is a concept that means the knowledge of love or the love of knowledge. It means various things. So depending on where you are in the context, it will determine what that means. The same with Poimandres, but just know that when you hear that term, that means God. It is God that is speaking to Hermes. Let's continue.
Who existed before the watery nature that appeared out of darkness. The light-giving word who comes from mind is the Son of God. Go on, I said. This is what you must know, that in you which sees and hears is the word of the Lord. But your mind is God the Father. They are not divided from one another, for their union is life. Thank you, I said. Understand the light then, and recognize it. After he said this, he looked me in the face for such a long time that I trembled at his appearance. But when he raised his head, I saw in my mind the light of powers beyond number, and a boundless cosmos that had come to be. The fire, encompassed by great power and subdued, kept its place fixed. In the vision I had, because of the discourse of Poimandres, these were my thoughts. Since I was terrified, out of my wits, he spoke to me again. In your mind you have seen the archetypal form, the pre-principle that exists before a beginning without end. This was what Poimandres said to me.
Dr. Box, there were many failed attempts to fix my teeth. I retouched all my wedding photos.
The elements of nature, whence have they arisen? I asked. And he answered, From the counsel of God, which, having taken in the word, and having seen the beautiful cosmos, imitated it, having become a cosmos through its own elements and its progeny of souls. The mind, who is God, being androgyne and existing as life and light, by speaking gave birth to a second mind, a craftsman, who, as God of fire and spirit, crafted 7 governors. They encompass the sensible world in circles, and their government is called fate.
Okay, so here, this is the reference to chakras, the 7 rulers, those who rule over the fates of the earth. And you see how the translation there is very similar to the Greek, where he said that it in circles. So the Greek word for chakra was spindle wheel. And then you see that when people are seeing this image of these spindle wheels, you see in the Hebrew Bible, in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, where they refer to the wheel within wheels, or the wheels within wheels, that they saw that God's chariot was being maneuvered on, that they were wheeled, they were like wheels within wheels. That is that word, that concept translates to spindle wheel in Greek, which translates to the word and the concept of chakra. Okay, so let's continue here. So the 7 fates, and their government is called fate. So they are literally the chakras that are governing the fates and personalities of the universe and the humans.
From the elements that weigh downwards, the word of God leapt straight up to the pure craftwork of nature, and united with the craftsman mind, for the word was of the same substance. The weighty elements of nature were left behind, bereft of reason, so as to be mere matter. The craftsman mind, together with the word, encompassing the circles and whirling them about with a rush, turned his craftworks about, letting them turn from an endless beginning to a limitless end, for it starts where it stops.
And here we're looking at the figure 8. We're looking at the Higgs boson, the 3, 6, and 9 again. We're allowing them to turn into themselves. So now they are turning into themselves, and they are infinite in what they are governing, but they are not going off into oblivion, that they are literally doing what we see as a closed circuit that is a torus field, so a toroidal field. So this is literally the description of chakras, and how the chakras are actually a closed network that is a figure 8, with the 0 point being the heart chakra, the center of the universe. Once again, here's a description of that by Hermes from thousands of years ago, not quite 5,000 years ago, but about 4.5, I think, 3 to 4,500 years ago. You have the same description from Hermes that you had from Thoth the Atlantean and every other philosophical, religious, or spiritual texts that at the time. This is one of the reasons why this scroll was taken out, and they were trying to eradicate it off the face of the earth, because of, here we are, we're what page are we on? We're on page 2, and the entire explanation by God is centering around what runs the universe and what governs the universe and governs the human condition. And it is the 7 chakras, and now the description of what those chakras are doing and how they function. So this is right here on page 2. So the beginning of the scroll, that is the Corpus Hermeticum, is literally starts out with the chakras, and we're going to get into entailing, or what that entails. And I'm sure that we're going to get in, well, actually, no, but we're going to get into more description of just how the workings of the universe is, and the secret to the universe, and the secret to ascension, the secret to finding your way back to God.
Revolving as mind wished them to, the circles brought forth from the weighty elements living things without reason, for they no longer kept the word with them. And the air brought forth winged things, the water things that swim. Earth and water had been separated from one another as mind wished, and earth brought forth from herself the living things that she held within.
Okay, so now we have God being, or the Creator being discussed as the mind, right? Because the mind, now you see that the Creator is the mind that is creating, right? So now here's creation again. Here's interaction where your will, the mind, is the Creator. The creative ability is within you, right? Within the Creator. So we, as a smaller creator, sub-logos, if you will, to the logos, the creator of the universe, that's where you get the description of, and then man was created in the image of God. So people always thought our shape, our form, physically was the image of what God looks like. Well, God looks like everything. So in some sense, yes, but the image that we were created in is that creative immortal soul that is the creative ability, the same as the living God. So this is another description of that right there. So let's continue.
4-footed beasts and crawling things, wild animals and tame. Mind, the Father of all, who is life and light, gave birth to a man like himself, whom he loved as his own child. The man was most fair. He had the Father's image, and God, who was really in love with his own form.
See, again, he had the Father's image. See, again, created in the image of the Father. So not unlike the Father. Okay, meaning that that we are the co-creator. We have the same ability as the Father. It doesn't mean that the human condition or the actual Homo sapien sapien is what God looks like. It's the personality. It is the soul itself that resides within that we're talking about here.
Bestowed on him all his craftworks. And after the man had observed what the craftsman had created with the Father's help, he also wished to make some craftwork, and the Father agreed to this. Entering the craftsman's sphere, where he was to have all authority, the man observed his brother's craftworks. The governors loved the man, and each gave a share of his own order. Learning well their...
Okay, remember that the governors are the chakras, correct? Remember that. At this point, when we're being referred to the governors are those who are governing the chakras. Now, or the names of the chakras. Now, in Thoth, the Atlantean, eventually when we get to that, once we finish this scroll, this book, we'll get to that. Thoth calls them the kings, the rulers of the seven rulers. And we'll get into that at some point once we finish this. But you'll see the reference. So remember this in the weeks and months to come. Once we start doing Thoth the Atlantean, you'll see the same thing that is being told in the beginning of that scripture as well, or that scroll.
Essence and sharing in their nature, the man wished to break through the circumference of the circles to observe the rule of the one given power over the fire.
And a commercial.
Having all authority over the cosmos of mortals and unreasoning animals, the man broke through the vault and stooped to look through the cosmic framework, thus displaying to lower nature the fair form of God. Nature smiled for love when she saw him whose fairness brings no surfeit, and who holds in himself all the energy of the governors and the form of God. For in the water she saw the shape of the man's fairest form.
See, so those who hold in service to others, those who hold the shape and form of God are more coveted than those who do not. They are considered the lower forms. Do you see? Not just the first and second dimensional beings, but beings living in the flesh. This is the reference.
And upon the earth its shadow. When the man saw in the water the form like himself, as it was in nature, he loved it and wished to inhabit it. Wish and action came in the same moment, and he inhabited the unreasoning form. Nature took hold of her beloved, hugged him all about and embraced him, for they were lovers. Because of this, unlike any other living thing on earth, mankind is twofold, in the body mortal, but immortal in the essential man.
Okay, so the essential man meaning the spirit, the soul, right? The immortal. So in the body, mortal, in the flesh, we are mortal, but we are immortal in the essential man. So the essential, if you look up the word essential, that means transcendent. So spirit, that means we have a soul. So here you see the description of the human condition is twofold: upper spiritual, lower physical. Okay, and this, like I said, this is a scroll that they tried to take out and eradicate from the knowledge that was written in here, that was written in Greek and in Latin, that came from a very old source information that we found when they found Hermes' information, who was Greek, but the reason he was based, where did he get his knowledge from? It was based in the Emerald Tablets. Okay, and we only know those because we found them buried at the feet of Hermes' statue when, for whatever reason, they were excavating that, because I think they did x-rays and found something was down there, and they dug it up. I don't know the exact story. I'll find that backstory and talk about that at some other point during this discussion when we're talking about this. Okay, let's continue.
Even though he is immortal and has authority over all things, mankind is affected by mortality because he is subject to fate. Thus, although man is above the cosmic framework, he became a slave within it. He is androgyne because he comes from an androgyne father.
Right, Denise? Sounds like Adam and Eve. That's the masculine and the feminine aspects that you're seeing already starting to play out. It was very astute of you to catch that reference when he mentioned that. Let's continue.
And he never sleeps because he comes from one who is sleepless. Yet love and sleep are his masters. And after this, O my mind, I love the word also. Poimandres said, "This is the mystery that has been kept hidden until this very day. When nature made love with the man, she bore a wonder most wondrous. In him he had the nature of the cosmic framework of the seven, who are made of fire and spirit, as I told you, and without delay nature at once gave birth to 7 men, androgyne and exalted, whose natures were like those of the 7 governors. And after this, O Poimandres, now I have come into a great longing."
See, there's that 7 again, right? Cassie already stated that. There's that magical number 7 again.
"And I yearn to hear, so do not digress." And Poimandres said, "Be silent. I have not yet unfolded to you the first discourse." "As you see, I am silent," said I. As I said then, the birth of the 7 was as follows. Earth was the female, water did the fertilizing, fire was the maturing force. Nature took spirit from the ether and brought forth bodies in the shape of the man. From life and light, the man became soul and mind. From life came soul, from light came mind, and all things in the cosmos of the senses remained thus until the cycle ended and...
Okay, so before we go any further, here you have to see that the reference, this is why you see some people today referencing the soul different from the spirit, because the reference in the ancient times, the soul was the mind and body in the physical, and the mind itself, well, that's where you hear that I think therefore I am. The mind was the spirit. Okay, so they referred to the body and the physicality as the soul, and they considered the mind the higher form. So you see a lot of that reverbing down to today when on the internet, when you hear people saying the soul as opposed to the spirit being completely different, because in the minds of most people that was the case. So that because of the way that translated to our modern day, the spirit or the essence that is your everlastingness was considered the mind of God. That's why, again, that was the reference that God was the mind. Do you see? So that is the light. The light is the mind. I think, therefore I am. So the soul is the physical body, hence the SOS, save our souls. Our souls are our physical body. So in this modern time, a lot of us try to blend those two together instead of separating them because of the totality. So you hear me say soul, spirit a lot of times, where I'm making that differential and that difference, but I'm tying them together as the totality. And if you are a fan of the law of one and what we've done for the past couple of years, you'll see that that's where Ra ties them together when Ra says the spirit, mind, body, soul totality, or totality complex, or complex totality, meaning all of the encompassing, that is the lower, upper three chakras, lower three chakras, and the heart chakra, the totality rounding everything out. But there's still the definition or the separation of soul being physicality and spirit or mind being spirit, which is etheric. And that's where you hear and see them saying God took from the ether. So the word ether or ether, depends on how you say it, means the mind of God, or that which is the creation or creative abilities of the creator. Okay, so you have to see that and realize that. So there is a separation in the ancient times, soul meaning physicality, mind meaning spirit. Okay, let's continue here.
Kinds of things began to be. Hear the rest, the word you yearn to hear. When the cycle was completed, the bond among all things was sundered by the counsel of God. All living things which had been androgyne were sundered into two parts, humans along with them, and part of them became male, part likewise female. But God immediately spoke a holy speech. Increase in increasing, and multiply in multitude, all you creatures and craftworks, and let him who is mindful recognize that he is immortal, that desire is the cause of death.
Okay, so here you're seeing odes of the modern Hebrew Bible. You have to remember that we already had the scriptures that were given to Moses by the time that Hermes was writing this. But Hermes claimed to have direct contact with God and is writing this stuff down. And so you hear echoes now of multiply, of the creation. But most importantly, right? So the most importantly, well, that would be. Let me back that up, and depending on the context of that. Sorry, Cassie's asking a definition of a word, which I didn't actually look it up, so I'm going by the context of here. So let's back it up slightly here, or I don't know if I can do that without going way back. Can I? So let me look that up, and then I'll get the direct translation, or maybe you can do that and put it in the chat for that word, because again, there's a concept there, right? So it depends on the context that is being used in it. So I'll have to take a look at that and myself.
And let him recognize all that exists. After God said this, Providence, through fate and through the cosmic framework, caused acts of intercourse and set in train acts of birth. And all things were multiplied according to kind. The one who recognized himself attained the chosen good. But the one who loved the body that came from the error of desire goes on in darkness, errant, suffering sensibly the effects of death. Those who lack knowledge, what great wrong have they done, I asked, that they should be deprived of immortality?
So that's where we get the word androgynous from, right? So literally, now I'm saying it wrong. And so it's actually androgyny, right? So that's where we get that word from. So that's that's genders, right? Masculine and feminine. So being one, first being one androgynous, male and female, and then separated into two is the description of what they're using here, what Hermes was using here. So that's where we literally get the word androgyny or androgynous is from that word. Okay. is from androgyne, or however you say that. I'm saying it wrong. Androgyne. So that literally means together as one, and then androgyny, right? That's how you say it. I'm saying it wrong. Androgyny, but that's the Latin spelling of it and wording, meaning that exact word. The way we spell it now is Gyny at the end, androgyny, instead of Gine. Okay, but so it literally means oneness, male and female. Then he's talking about separating them into sexes, masculine and feminine, male and female. Okay, let's continue. So thank you for asking that question there, because I should have had that prepared. And I was like, wait, it depends on the context that he's using it in. Let's continue.
You behave like a person who has not given thought to what he has heard. Did I not tell you to think? I am thinking. I remember, and tell me, why do they deserve death who are in death? Because what first gives rise to each person's body is the hateful darkness, from which comes the watery nature, from which the body was constituted in the sensible.
You're welcome. Sorry.
That he who has understood himself advances toward God, as God's discourse has it. Because, I said, the Father of all things was constituted of light and life, and from him the man came to be. You say your speech well. Life and light are God and Father, from whom the man came to be. So if you learn that you are from light and life, and that you happen to come from them, you shall advance to life once again. This is what Poimandres said. But tell me again, I asked, how shall I advance to life, O my mind? For God says, let the person who is mindful recognize himself. All people have mind, do they not? Hold your tongue, fellow. Enough talk. I myself, the mind, am present to the blessed and good and pure and merciful, to the reverent, and my presence becomes a help. They quickly recognize everything, and they propitiate the Father lovingly and give thanks, praising and singing hymns affectionately and in the order appropriate to him. Before giving up the body to its proper death, they loathe the senses, for they see their effects. Or rather, I, the mind.
Yeah, sorry about that right then. I don't know what happened, because when I clicked on the StreamYard Studio, my screen literally winked out of existence, and it was just black, and then it popped back on. So something happened, and I started buffering right then. It looks like my latency went down. Now I have a full signal again. I'm not sure what's going on, but it's fluctuating quite a bit. So I apologize I don't know how long I was buffering, but Cassie actually said that. She was like, "Ooh, buffering." So I didn't see it because I wasn't in the studio screen, so I couldn't tell whether my Wi-Fi was dipping down right then or not. And when I went to change screens to go back into the studio to see, it took me a minute to get there. It took me about 2 seconds instead of instantaneous. So I apologize for that. So hopefully you guys didn't miss much right there. Let's continue.
Mind will not permit the effects of the body to strike and work their results on them. As gatekeeper, I will refuse entry to the evil and shameful effects, cutting off the anxieties that come from them. But from these I remain distant. The thoughtless and evil and wicked and envious and greedy and violent and irreverent, giving way to the avenging demon who wounds the evil person, assailing him sensibly with the piercing fire, and thus arming him the better for lawless deeds, so that greater vengeance may befall him. Such a person does not cease longing after insatiable appetites, struggling in the darkness without satisfaction. This tortures him, and makes the fire grow upon him all the more. You have taught me all things well, O mind, just as I wanted. But tell me again about the way up. Tell me how it happens." To this, Poimandres said, "First, in releasing the material body, you give the body itself over to alteration, and the form that you used to have vanishes. To the demon you give over your temperament, now inactive. The body's senses rise up and flow back to their particular sources, becoming separate parts and mingling again with the energies."
Right? Okay, so Christy, welcome. Who else? Who did I miss? Was it Cody? Cody, welcome. Welcome, guys. If you guys don't say hi in the chat, I only see numbers. But if you want to create a shout out, say hello to me in the chat, and I'll give you a shout out. Okay, let's continue. All right. So if you guys are not quite sure, if you just tuned in, you can see the description on up there. This is the Corpus Hermeticum from the Hermetic texts. All right, let's continue.
And feeling and longing go on toward irrational nature. Thence the human being rushes up through the cosmic framework, at the first zone surrendering the energy of increase and decrease, at the second evil machination, a device now inactive, at the third the illusion of longing, now inactive, at the fourth the ruler's arrogance, now freed of excess, at the fifth unholy presumption and daring recklessness, at the sixth the evil impulses that come from wealth, now inactive, and at the seventh zone the deceit that lies in ambush. And then, stripped of the effects of the cosmic framework, the human enters the region of the Ogdode. He has his own proper power, and along with the blessed he hymns the Father. Those present there rejoice together in his presence, and having become like his companions, he also hears certain...
Penny, welcome. Did I not say hi? I apologize for that. You've been in the chat for a minute, even making comments, and I didn't say hello to you. So hi, I'm for late. Hi, sorry about that. Let's continue.
Powers that exist beyond the Ogdoaic region, and hymn God with sweet voice.
The pineal gland has tiny little cilia, hair-like extensions all around.
Okay, let's continue.
They rise up to the Father in order and surrender themselves to the powers, and, having become powers, they enter into God. This is the final good for those who have received knowledge, to be made God. Why do you still delay? Having learned all this, should you not become guide to the worthy, so that through you the human race might be saved by God?
See, so here again, you see that if you're not balancing the chakras, then you will go through these different places in the flesh. But again, at the end here, you see them saying, this is Hermes talking to God once again. God saying, if you go through and learn this knowledge, effectively being in service to others, not in service to self, no longer living of the flesh, but living of the spirit or mind, according to the ancient Greeks, of the mind or of the light of God, then you will be raised up to heaven. Okay? So literally, again, if you balance your chakras and you're living right, properly, and being in service to others, you will gain the knowledge and you will rise up in your vibration and be able to, at some point, ascend back to being in the presence of God, or go to heaven, or whatever you call that, Elysium, or whatever you call that place.
As he was saying this to me, Poimandres joined with the powers. Then he sent me forth, empowered and instructed on the nature of the universe and on the supreme vision, after I had given thanks to the Father of all and praised him. And I began proclaiming to mankind the beauty of reverence and knowledge. People, earthborn men, you who have surrendered yourselves to drunkenness and sleep and ignorance of God, make yourselves sober and end your drunken sickness, for you are bewitched in unreasoning sleep.
See, in unreasoning sleep. So drunkenness, wickedness, living of the flesh, then you are veiled. Okay, you are bewitched in the unreasoning sleep. Okay, so here again is the reference to either being awake or being asleep, either ascending and learning and gaining the knowledge from the universe itself, or you're asleep and you are veiled. So this is a common thread that everyone knew from tens of thousands of years ago down to the time period that was, just a couple of thousand years ago, and specifically during the Renaissance when they burned all books. So there was a time, Council of Nicaea 1 and 2, where all of the knowledge that talked like this was taken away from the human condition and literally pulled out of all the Bibles, and systematically all of this kind of talk everywhere from around the world was, in their minds, corrupted the human condition and kept you, of course, from listening to them as the entire deities, but listening to God. And they couldn't have that. So they tried to burn him, and they tried to kill anybody who had this knowledge that would not let them destroy it. And some of the knowledge was hidden, and we found the stuff, and now we're able to read them again and find out that for hundreds of thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, everyone around the world had access to this knowledge and knew about it until a certain time when a certain group of people decided that knowledge needed to be eradicated from the earth. And they've been systematically keeping it from the human population for at least 3,000 years now. Maybe not quite that long in some places, but they have been trying.
When they heard, they gathered round with one accord. And I said, "Why have you surrendered yourselves to death, earthborn men, since you have the right to share in immortality? You who have journeyed with error, who have partnered with ignorance, think again. Escape the shadowy light, leave corruption behind, and take a share in immortality."
See, and you see a reference here to error. You have traveled with error. In the Book of Truth, or the Scroll of Truth, which is also one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the Scroll of Truth, error is the female deity figure who created the human condition, and that the human condition is fallible because error was fallible, hence the term we use, the word error. It's where we get that from, by the way, the concept of error being something that you made a mistake. However, in there, and we'll get to the Book of Truth at some point, probably after we do the Emerald Tablets, we'll be either jumping to the Emerald Tablets or the Book of Truth. I'll be honest with you, I haven't figured out which one I want to do next. But in the Book of Truth, you're going to hear error being used a lot with synonymous with the human condition, meaning the lower three chakras living in the flesh, and in that sense, in that it was a mistake, or that you're making a mistake by living in the flesh, living wrongly, and you should be living in the spirit, living in the mind, living in the light, and becoming more like God. Hence the Jesus term of the way to heaven is through me. Okay. Being the light of the world, or Jesus being the word of God, which is Penandra, is that same concept of him saying he was the Son of Man, the teacher of man, is what Penandra means, which means also the word of God. So in some sense, this was written prior to Jesus, that this plays into that prophecy of Jesus coming here and doing that. Jesus never referred to the Hermetica when he was here. However, here you can see that there's at least the references that came from the Book of Moses about the light of the world, or the son of creation, the Son of Man.
Some of them who had surrendered themselves to the way of death resumed their mocking and withdrew, while those who desired to be taught cast themselves at my feet. Having made them rise, I became guide to my race, teaching them the words, how to be saved and in what manner. And I sowed the words of wisdom among them, and they were nourished from the ambrosial water.
Well, Denise, not just bewitched, not just dreams, but being basically asleep, being veiled, right? So you also would then have nightmares instead of regular dreams, because you would be more bellicose, as Ra would say, more prone to violence living in the flesh than you would if you are being self-serving than you would if you were living in the spirit or being in service to others. So then your dreams would also reflect your character. Your character drives your focus, drives your reality, creates your reality. So if you're evil, you're going to have more nightmares. And sometimes the evil people, we learned this in the raw material, that evil then tries to get into your head and get your ego to sway your dreams, to give you nightmares and of hopelessness and things like that. When you're not actually ascending and you're just living in the flesh, you're more prone to having nightmares. But that doesn't mean that because of your nightmares that you're wicked, because evil then tries to use your nightmares, your dreams, to make nightmares, to convince you to feel hopeless and to not be in any way in service to others and be spiritual.
When evening came and the sun's light began to disappear entirely, I commanded them to give thanks to God, and when each completed the thanksgiving, he turned to his own bed. Within myself I recorded the kindness of Poimandres, and I was deeply happy, because I was filled with what I wished, for the sleep of my body became sobriety of soul. The closing of my eyes became true vision, my silence became pregnant with good, and the birthing of the word became a progeny of goods.
As I went through my timeline, I realized that, I was sexualized 5 years old, and I started to experiment.
This happened to me because I was receptive of mind, of Poimandres, that is, the word of sovereignty. I have arrived, inspired with the divine breath of truth. Therefore I give praise to God the Father from my soul and with all my might. Holy is God, the Father of all. Holy is God, whose counsel is done by his own powers. Holy is God, who wishes to be known, and is known by his own people. Holy are you, who by the word have constituted all things that are. Holy are you, from whom all nature was born as image. Holy are you, of whom nature has not made a like figure. Holy are you, who are stronger than every power. Holy are you, who surpass every excellence. Holy are you, mightier than praises. You whom we address in silence, the unspeakable, the unsayable, accept pure speech offerings from a heart and soul that reach up to you.
Right, so here, without a name, he who is holy, he who is without name, referring to God without a name, but I am more references to the book of Moses that was given to Moses by God.
Grant my request not to fail in the knowledge that befits our essence. Give me power, and with this gift I shall enlighten those who are in ignorance, brothers of my race, but your sons. Thus I believe and I bear witness. I advance to life and light. Blessed are you, Father. He who is your man wishes to join you in the work of sanctification, since you have provided him all authority. 2. Is it not true, Asclepius, that everything moved is moved in something and by something? Certainly. But isn't it necessary for that in which something is moved to be larger than the moved? It is necessary.
See, I love the Q&A here, right? And because when you ask, you shall receive. Wait a minute, where's that reference? That reference is in the Bible as well. Ask and ye shall receive.
So then the mover is stronger than the moved. Stronger indeed. And that in which something is moved must necessarily have a nature contrary to that of the moved? Yes, entirely so. This cosmos is large then, and no body is larger. Agreed. And is it densely packed? For it has been filled with many other large bodies, or rather, with all the bodies that exist. So it is. But is the cosmos a body? A body, yes.
Okay, so the reference, the cosmos, is referencing the totality of space. Okay, and the question here is, that is the cosmos a body? And the answer is yes. Okay. So what is that exactly? Is that reference something referring to we are literally in the body of the creator? Right. So if you guys have listened to my teachings at all, you would hear me say that it is just as likely that the universe itself is one brain cell inside the creator of the universe. Why? Because we have a radial image of the universe itself and a radial image of a single human brain cell, and they're identical. And I have that visual in the introduction video when my music is playing, that you can see that I play all the time. So literally, it is the same, only a billion times more complex. Maybe not a billion times, but it's literally hundreds of times more complex, more neural pathways. But otherwise, it's identical with a central point and all tentacles going out from that are the neural pathways that electricity or thought processes work on or work through. And we have that in the universe. And every religion around the world on this planet refers to that as the tree of life. Okay. And that is the neural network. That is the neural network that runs the universe itself. No different than a tree growing and having the root as below, so above, having the root system being almost as big, or if not identical to what you see out of the ground. That is the arms and leaf system of the tree, as below, so above, as above, so below. And the central point, the 0 point, being the trunk of the tree. We humans have that endocrine system that works the exact same way, with 7 chakras and 7 organs in our body. And the electrical system, the endocrine system of our body, is working exactly on a larger scale, a macro scale, to the micro scale that is a single cell.
And a moved body? Certainly. The place in which it moves, then, how large must it be? And what is its nature? Is it not larger by far so as to sustain continuity of motion and not hold back its movement, lest the moved be crowded and confined? It must be something truly enormous, Trismegistus. What is its nature? It will be of a contrary nature, Asclepius, no? But the nature contrary to body is the incorporeal. Agreed. Place is incorporeal then, but the incorporeal is either divine or else it is God.
Okay, so here you see Hermes, 3 times great, Trismegistus, is actually starting to realize the incorporeal is either, look at where I paused it, divine, or else it is God. Meaning the body of the universe is either divine or it is in fact God.
By divine, I mean here the unbegotten, not the begotten. If it is divine, it is something essential, but if it is God, it comes to be even without essence. Otherwise, it is something intelligible, and this is why. For us, God is the foremost intelligible entity, but not so for God himself. What is intelligible falls within the awareness of one who thinks of it. Thus, for himself, God is not intelligible, because he is not something distinct from the object of his thought. In other words, so as to be an object of thought for himself. For us, however, he is something distinct. Hence, he is an object of thought for us. But if place is intelligible, it is intelligible not as God, but as place. And if it were intelligible as God, it would be regarded so not as place, but as energy capable of containing. Yet everything moved is moved not in something moved, but in something at rest. And the mover is also at rest, unable to be moved conjointly. How then, O Trismegistus, are the things of this world moved conjointly with their movers? You have said that the planetary spheres are moved by the spheres of the fixed. This motion, Asclepius, is not conjoint but opposed, For the spheres are not moved in the same way. They move contrary to one another, and the contrariety keeps the motion balanced through opposition. Resistance is the stilling of motion. Since the planetary spheres are moved contrarily to the fixed, by a contrary encounter with them, they are moved because of their balance in relation to the contrariety itself. It cannot be otherwise.
Okay, so here you're seeing light and darkness, good and evil, opposites, masculine, feminine energies. So you see that Hermes, just witnessing the universe and the bodies of the universe, planetary bodies, stars, space itself being the one thing that is at rest, that is constant, and the moving of the planets, the sun, the stars in the sky is the contrarian. So you see that you have a masculine and a feminine again, and you have the light and dark, and you have the balance in the universe. So this has been something that people, Peter, welcome. This has been something that humans have been pondering for thousands of years, but you see that Hermes, thousands of years ago, was pondering the same thing and coming to the same realization that everyone else was coming to, right? So yes, yin and yang, balance. Cassie, yes. Light and darkness, yin and yang, the balance in the universe. Okay, so he was aware of that, but he didn't call it yin and yang because he was Greek. So he may not have known about the Asian concept of yin and yang. However, he understood the concept of contrarian in the contrast to the opposites. Do you see the opposite energy that? And at this point, the mind of God or the word of God is explaining to him just that, and explaining the seven chakras, and explaining that God created the universe and then split the universe into masculine and feminine, positive and negative, good and evil, or in service to self and in service to others, the yin and the yang. And that's what they called it in the Orient. The Chinese and the Japanese people called it yin and yang. Okay, so the concept is universal. And the description is merely a semantical thing because of the languages and the of a particular race of people: Greek, Roman, Chinese, Japanese, Asian, Egyptian, or Hebrew. You have a different way. They have a different way of describing things, but it means the same thing. Hence the problem with lost in translation. But when you look at what did these words mean, or the concept, you find the concept was the same. Instead of chakra from the east, right? You have spindle wheel from the Greeks, right? So the Mideast, they called that a spindle wheel. So you have different names for the same things or concepts in different languages, but they represent the exact same thing. And the problem with that is most people don't catch that. Even theologians don't catch that, and they don't do that comparative. Usually theologians, unfortunately, do a comparative of religion itself in the semantical. This is how this religion is and how that religion is, but nobody gets to the spiritual portion of those religions to actually show the correlation that all these religions or all these spiritual practices around the world in ancient times were telling the same thing, just in their way. They were telling it slightly different only because the words they used meant something to someone differently, because they were concepts instead of direct words. Our words are concepts too, but we have assumptions because we learn them as we're speaking. And we use the word run, for instance, which has like 300 different definitions in the modern dictionary. When you read the word run in a sentence, you instinctively figure out which version of that word it means by the words that are in the sentence and how it's being used in the sentence. Do you see? So we automatically do that. And when you see people trying to translate something from a foreign language or from an ancient language, older language, they don't know exactly what the context was. So a lot of times in a book that is clinical, scientific, they'll tell you this word means this, or this. And it could mean these different things, but because the person who is translating it as being a scientist, they're not going to assume that what they think it means is what the writer meant that for it to mean. So that creates problems with people who say, well, I think it meant this, and therefore it means this. So when you see somebody doing that, it drives me crazy when you read something and you find out that it was based on an older language, and you see that the person didn't tell you that certain words have a whole concept and could have meant something different that changed the narrative of the sentence or what they were trying, the point they were trying to get across to you. The narrative would have changed if you would have taken that word in a different context. And they don't tell you that, and they leave it out. That means that they translated it by their opinion, not in a clinical way. And that gets annoying to people like me who will read those things and say they didn't translate that properly. They translated it the way they wanted it to say. So they translated the words in a way that they wanted it for some other meaning or someone else's agenda. And that drives some of us crazy when people do that. But the problem is people do that and they publish it and they don't tell anyone. So people take it as the gospel. And then they don't realize that word or those words meant something completely different at the time that they wrote it. And one of the, for instances that I like to use is Jesus, when referring to Mary Magdalene, they said Mary Magdalene was his companion. And people are now, you translate that now to what we use the word companion to now, which means buddy, friend. Okay? Somebody that travels with you. But in the time of Jesus, that word companion literally meant spouse. Okay? Jesus was a rabbi. That means teacher in modern English. You cannot or could not at that time when Jesus was alive be a rabbi and teach in a synagogue, which we know from history that he did, unless you were actually married. And in the Hebrew religion, if a man or a woman, but specifically a man, turned 31, they had to be married because it was part of the religion. So Jesus had to have been married to someone to be called rabbi and to teach. And he also had to either have children or his spouse had to be pregnant. You can look this up. I'm not making this up, and neither did anyone else. This was the law of the land at the time that Jesus was alive. So Jesus had to have been married to someone, and the only person who was referred to in a word that time meant wife was companion was Mary Magdalene. Okay? And he had to have been married and had to have either been, she had to have been pregnant or they had to have had children for him to be called rabbi and teach in the synagogue. And the reason that Jesus was crucified was that he pissed off the Sanhedrin because he taught in the synagogue on the day of rest, which was on Sunday, in the synagogue, and they didn't like it, and they brought him up on charges. So they admitted that he was teaching in the synagogue, but it wasn't illegal. He was a rabbi. He was only teaching on the wrong day. So for him to have been a rabbi, he had to have been married, and Mary Magdalene is the only person that was referred to as his companion. Okay, so think about that. So you have to understand, getting back to what I was saying before about philosophy or even religion or history, that if you want to understand truly what someone is writing in a time period that's not the time period that you're living in, you actually have to understand what the words that you're using meant to that person, or what the words they're using meant to them at the time. Not what they mean to you now, but what they meant at the time to them when they wrote it. Because otherwise you lose something in translation, hence the term lost in translation. Not just translating from one language to another, which is all giving a problem in and of itself, which even this text that we're doing now has been translated from Greek and Latin into the modern English, but this text is the most accurate in history, said by all the academics in the world today. But that you lose the word translation if you don't understand what that word meant at the time of the author writing it and the context that it was being used at that particular moment. So if you just assume that it means what it meant today, you would be wrong more often than you would be right because of the way words have changed over time. Let's continue.
For example, those bears that you see neither setting nor rising but turning about the same point, do you think they are moved or at rest? They are moved, Trismegistus. What sort of motion, Asclepius? Motion revolving about the same points. Revolution is the same thing as motion about the same point that is held in place by immobility. Going around it prevents going beyond it. But when the going beyond is prevented, there is resistance to the going around, and thus the contrary motion remains constant, stabilized by the contrariety. I will give you an example here on earth, one that your eyes can see. As they swim, observe mortal living things, those like a human, I mean. When the water rushes by, the resistance of feet and hands becomes an immobility, so that the person is not swept downstream with the water. A clear example, Trismegistus. Thus, all motion is moved in immobility and by immobility. And it happens that the motion of the cosmos and of every living thing made of matter is produced not by things outside the body, but by those within it acting upon the outside, by intelligible entities, either soul or spirit or something else incorporeal. For body does not move in souled body, nor does it move any body at all, not even the soulless. How do you mean this, Trismegistus? Are they not bodies that move sticks and stones and all the other soulless things? By no means, Asclepius. Not the body itself, but what is within the body that moves the soulless thing is what moves them both. The body that bears as well as the body that is born. Hence the soulless will not move the soulless. And so you see how the soul is overloaded when it bears two bodies by itself. And so it is clear that things moved are moved in something and by something. Must things that are moved be moved in emptiness, Trismegistus? Hold your tongue, Asclepius. Not one of the things that are is empty by reason of their substantiality. For a being could not be a being if it were not full of substance. The subsistent can never become empty. Are not some things empty, Trismegistus, such as a pail, or a pot, or a vat, or other such things? Ah, what a great mistake, Asclepius. Would you consider empty the things that are entirely and completely full? What do you mean, Trismegistus? Air is a body, no? Yes, it is a body. But does not this body pervade everything that exists, and fill them all by pervading them? And a body is a mixture constituted of the four elements, is it not? So all those things that you call empty are full of air. But if they are full of air, they are also full of the four bodies. And so it turns out that a contrary account comes to light, that the things you call full are all empty of air, since they are crowded with these other bodies and have no place to take in the air. Therefore, the things you call empty must be named hollow rather than empty, for in their substance they are full of air and spirit.
See, so this concept here, the thinking, is sound because depending on where you look, this is the point of Hermes here, in that the contrarian ideology here is that one thing transforms to another. When you have something that is empty of substance, it is full of air. So if it is empty, and he's onto the right thinking process in what he's saying, that if it's either full of the physical lower three chakras or the astral upper three chakras. So something, even if it is empty like a glass, or that depending on the half empty half full ideology, whether you think it passively or or optimistic or pessimistic, meaning you see it as half empty or half full, then the same thing. To think that something is empty when it is not in fact empty, it is full, but it is full of air, which is more astral because it is a thing. Air is a thing. So nothing is actually empty. And that'll kind of mess up your brain a little bit when you're thinking about it. But he's referring here to physicality and spirituality in what you see in the flesh. Okay. So in some sense, he's correct. And your focus, once again, determines your reality. So your focus, whether you're focused on it being full, being substance only, substance only, substantive, or figurative, or spiritual, full of air. Do you see?
Your reasoning is irrefutable, Trismegistus. So what have we said of the place in which the universe is moved? That it is incorporeal, Asclepius. What is the incorporeal, then? Mind as a whole, wholly enclosing itself, free of all body, unerring, unaffected, untouched, at rest in itself, capable of containing all things and preserving all that exists. And its rays, as it were, are the good, the truth, the archetype of spirit, the archetype of soul. What then is God? God is what does not subsist as any of these, since he is the cause of their being, for all of them and for each and every one of them that exists. And he has left nothing else remaining that is not being, for all things are those that come to be from things that are, not from those that are not.
Okay, so here again, now you see Hermes understanding the concept that you hear from thousands of years later from Lao Tzu in China in 634 to 640 BCE, before Common Era, where you see that Lao Tzu talks about the formless thing that is God, the creator. He who seeks it shall not find it. He who gropes for it shall not grasp it. Meaning the difference between physicality and spirituality, and that the all-knowing creator of the universe is outside of both of those things. And you see Hermes also stating that the creator of the universe, God, is outside of both physicality and spirituality, because God is the reason that those two things exist. God created both spiritual and physical, meaning that the creator is outside of those things. So here's the concept that he's getting to, which we'll find out if he actually says what the real concept, that all of this is in the mind of the creator, because the creator created this. So the creator itself is not bound by either flesh or spirit, because the creator is past both of those, because the creator created both of those. Therefore, the creator is larger than that and is something else. And that is the contention here of Hermes. So let's continue.
Things that are not do not have a nature that enables them to come to be. Their nature is such that they cannot come to be anything. Things that are, on the other hand, do not have a nature that prevents them from ever existing. What do you mean by what never exists? God is not mind, but he is the cause of mind's being. He is not spirit, but the cause of spirit's being.
See, so he's getting more into details now of the concept. He's understanding the concept of the creator being beyond spirit, beyond physicality, because the creator created both of those things. Let's continue.
And he is not light, but the cause of light's being. Hence, one must show God reverence with those two names assigned to him alone and to no other. Except God alone, none of the other beings called gods, nor any human, nor any demon can be good in any degree. That good is he alone, and none other. All others are incapable of containing the nature of the good, because they are body and soul, and have no place that can contain the good. For the magnitude of the good is as great as the substance of all beings, corporeal and incorporeal, sensible and intelligible. This is the good. This is God. You should not say that anything else is good, or you will speak profanely. Nor should you ever call God anything but the good, since this too would be profane. All use the word good in speaking, of course, but not all understand what it can mean. For this reason, God is not understood by all. In their ignorance, they apply the name good to the gods and to certain humans, even though these beings are never able to be good or to become so. The good is what is inalienable and inseparable from God, since it is God Himself. All other immortal gods are given the name good as an honor, but God is the good by nature, not because of honor. God has one nature, the good. In God and the good together there is but one kind, from which come all other kinds. The good is what gives everything and receives nothing. God gives everything and receives nothing. Therefore God is the good, and the good is God. God's other name is Father, because He is capable of making all things. Making is characteristic of a father. Prudent people therefore regard the making of children as a duty in life to be taken most seriously and greatly revered. And should any human being pass away childless, they see it as the worst misfortune and irreverence. After death, such a person suffers retribution from demons. This is his punishment. The soul of the childless one is sentenced to a body that has neither a man's nature nor a woman's, a thing accursed under the sun. Most assuredly, then, Asclepius, you should never congratulate a childless person. On the contrary, show pity for his calamity, knowing what punishment awaits him. This is the content and the extent of what should be told to you, Asclepius, by way of introduction to the nature of all things. 3. A sacred discourse of Hermes.
See, so there you can see the concept at a time when the world had far less people in it. In the religions of the time, even the Greek, because Hermes was Greek, where they basically required you to have children, right? That people that were childless, again, were because they're self-serving. But they didn't understand back then that some people weren't not able to bear children, right? So we have that concept here today where some people aren't able to have children. It doesn't mean that they're self-serving, or it doesn't mean that they're evil. So they didn't understand that. And they thought there was something wrong with somebody if they weren't able to have children. And that created a dilemma for a lot of women who, for whatever reason, couldn't. So they came up with the idea that you must have done something in a past life and you've now offended God. And so God's not allowing you to have children in this life. And that's translated to today with this so-called karmic debt that they keep trying to sell people on, that you have a karmic debt that you owe, and that you have to pay that and clear that. And that comes from the Egyptian Book of the Dead as well, where in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, if you don't have the proper spell to get that karmic debt off of you, you will never be able to get into heaven. It also, in most cultures, have that the Vikings believed that if you didn't die in combat, you wouldn't be able to go to Valhalla, or if you didn't have your sword in your hand. So they would bury you with your sword in your hand so that you could have that in the afterlife. That concept translated to the Egyptian with that scroll that you had to have that would then allow you to know the secret of how to get into heaven, right? So yeah, you're welcome, right? So literally you see sort of the odes of that, whereas in the modern day we don't judge people for that, because we understand physiology a little bit more, and that some people, and it doesn't have to do with, but they're still, with anything that they did in a past life. However, there is still something to that, and a thought of that, where some people would say, I don't know, maybe I did something in my past life. All of that has become sort of genetic, because it was done for so long that people aren't quite sure, right? Yes, Joanne, thank you. That's right. I was trying to be nice and not say that. I was feeling that was sort of third dimensional thinking, right? Because it kind of is, and that was where I was going, and I was trying to be PG-13, but you just said the obvious, so I put it on the screen and I read it. So not everybody is as enlightened, even though Hermes is very awake and very enlightened. He was Greek, and so he did have some conceptual issues of the time. But you have to remember, this is like 4,500 years ago. So he's doing pretty good with everything else. But that is very 3D thinking. I agree with you. I was trying to be nice to get around that. How am I going to skirt this? And you just stated what I was trying to figure out how to not to say. And I was like, okay, Joanne did it. She said it, put it on the screen. So you're right. That was exactly that, very 3D in its concept, because it assumes that anyone who can't or doesn't have children is evil in some way. So that would, by that standard, I would be evil, because I don't physically have my own children in this life. So anyone who knows me knows that I am the complete opposite of self-serving and evil. And however, a few thousand years ago, I would have been judged for not having children by the age of 31 in Jesus's time, or 33 in Greek mythology at the time, and sometimes in some cultures younger than that, depending on the life expectancy of the humans at the time. Okay, so you have to realize that there is that, and I wanted to pause there and kind of point that out, because that's a very 3D concept that eventually they realized was not something that you weren't cursed. And you have to also remember, these are the same people who translated the scrolls the way they did of, say, the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, that Eve bit the fruit, and therefore that's called the original sin in a lot of Christianity today. And the original sin means that you women during your menstrual cycle have cramps and have pain in childbirth because of the original sin. And that entire story has been corrupted. The story of Adam and Eve is not accurate to the original story, and it doesn't mean that at all. But, however, at the time that they changed that story, again, just like Hermes was living in a time when there was a monotheistic, male-dominated god, no goddess being in charge. So coming from a masculine society, the women at his time in Greek life were not equal to men as much as they were in other times. So therefore, they had a male-dominated religion, and it was masculine, warlike, and that is reflective in the thinking of the men. Also in history, which has always drove me crazy, when they refer to the human condition, they call it man. In the big four religions that we have currently on the face of the earth, the human condition is referred to as man, and that has always bothered me. I haven't stated it very often, but every time I hear that reference or read that reference in the Bibles from around the world, from the big four religions, and even actually, I think it goes out to the big 5 or 6, religions from around the world. That's an arrogant, masculine, warlike society who has kept the femininity, women, down as a servant in their culture, as property in their culture for thousands of years. And that is reflective of the split and the concerted effort to keep people stranded here on earth by making them warlike and masculine and not venerating the feminine and the peace and love and that energy that is the spiritual energy that is the upper three chakras, but keeping the societal structure of this earth and the lower three chakras living in the flesh. So here you see that even in his wisdom, reflection, and echoes of his upbringing as a Greek philosophical person, that he is still bound by his reality, unfortunately, here in that. And I wanted to stop and discuss that just so that you guys would see that, right? So thank you, Joanne, for helping me by stating that. That was very 3D thinking and speaking of him. But they all believed that at the time, because that is the structure at the time was new, and they were, look at the religions. They got rid of the feminine and pushed it aside during all of the editing that was being done from all of the religious texts around the world, even though with Hermes and this body of work, the Corpus Hermeticum, there was a lot of stuff that was in there that was edited out. They, of course, were already at work, is my point, in editing and keeping the women, the feminine energy, the upper three chakras out of the way. That was already being done, but it wasn't enough because of the other knowledge that Hermes was talking about had to be eradicated. And this is why I'm going through these texts and showing you that this stuff still existed and still exists to this day. And you can find it in all these religions in areas where these people who edited these Bibles didn't understand the message to edit it out. And it was written in a way by the creator to make sure that they didn't understand it, so that with those who have the eyes to see or the ears to hear or the mind to know would be able to figure these things out. And those are the highlights in wording that are in these old religions to tell you this, there's something more to see here when you're reading this passage. And so you see that reoccurring. And I'm talking about that in my second book that I'm currently writing, where I'm showing you these places and translating what that stuff meant. And I don't know when that book will be out at this point. It might be a year or two from now before if I get that published. All right, let's continue.
God is the glory of all things, as also are the divine and the divine nature. God, as well as mind and nature and matter, is the beginning of all things that are, since he is wisdom meant to show them forth. The divine is also a beginning, and it is nature and energy, and necessity and completion and renewal. In the deep there was boundless darkness and water and fine, intelligent spirit, all existing by divine power in chaos. Then a holy light was sent forth, and elements solidified out of liquid essence. And all the gods divide the parts of germinal nature. While all was unlimited and unformed, light elements were set apart to the heights, and the heavy were grounded in the moist sand, the whole of them delimited by fire and raised aloft to be carried by spirit. The heavens appeared in 7 circles. The gods became visible in the shapes of the stars and all their constellations.
7 circles, once again, right? So again, the chakras, again, the representation as above, so below.
And the arrangement of this lighter substance corresponded to the gods contained in it. The periphery rotated in the air, carried in a circular course by divine spirit. Through his own power, each god sent forth what was assigned to him. And the beasts came to be, 4-footed, crawling, water-dwelling, winged, and every germinating seed and grass and every flowering plant. Within them they had the seed of rebirth. The gods sowed the generations of humans to know the works of God, to be a working witness to nature, to increase the number of mankind, to master all things under heaven, to discern the things that are good, to increase by increasing, and multiply by multiplying.
See, so it was still embedded in the religions at the time because the human condition, just having gone through a cataclysm, they were trying to increase their population a lot more than today. So you heard this rhetoric of of multiplying, be fruitful and multiply, have children, and multiply. God was telling the human condition, telling humans over and over, multiply, multiply, and that's driven in us. It's in our DNA. It's still an instinctual thing, just like in nature, for us to want to multiply and create. That's part of the expansion of our consciousness as well, in that drive that we have to create, even in a physical way of having children, but in the non-physical or in other physical ways by creating things, building things, and the like. That all is instilled in us in our DNA. And some people want to say that has to do with aliens creating us, because they answer the question of everything with aliens. That's why we'd always laugh. Like, a lot of people make jokes about Giorgio Tsoukalos from the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, because he was always aliens. I don't know what the question was. I didn't hear the question, but I know the answer is aliens, because he was always saying that everything was aliens. Whatever somebody would say. How do you think humans got here? Aliens. Why do you think Moses was aliens? You know what I mean? So some people will automatically turn that concept to UFOs and aliens, right? All right, let's continue.
And through the wonder-working course of the cycling gods, they created every soul incarnate to contemplate heaven, the course of the heavenly gods, the works of God, and the working of nature, to examine things that are
Hi, Shelley, by the way. I didn't say hi when you popped in and started talking. Hello, welcome. All right, let's
good,
continue.
To know divine power, to know the whirling changes of fair and foul, and to discover every means of working skillfully with things that are good.
Hi, everyone. Mark Barden here at Sandy Hook Promise. On December 14th, 2000.
For them, this is the beginning of the virtuous life and of wise thinking, as far as the course of the cycling gods destines it. And it is also the beginning of their release to what will remain of them after they have left great monuments on earth in works of industry. In the fame of seasons they will become dim, and from every birth of ensouled flesh, from the sowing of crops, and from every work of industry, what is diminished will be renewed by necessity, and by the renewal that comes from the gods, and by the course of nature's measured cycle.
See, so the concept of the cyclical nature of not just the planet itself by a day, a month, a day, a week, a month, and even a second, an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year, being a cycle. But they started realizing that the universe itself was working in cycles. The stars themselves worked in cycles, meaning that it was a greater concept. And they also realized that life and death, through death becomes life, and through life comes death. And that to renew, everything has to die to be reborn. And so the cyclical nature was something that they did observe, and we have as well in the concept, but we've downplayed, that's part of the editing, that is downplayed this measured cycle, is where I paused it, that is, they're downplaying that because it is a cyclical nature. That's the 3, 6, and 9. That's the Fibonacci sequence, or more importantly, the golden mean ratio, which is the spiral. And you see this playing out throughout history, where these philosophical or religious or spiritual persons around the world were painting and carving these spirals in caves and on things in places that people were like, yeah, that was just the serpent god, because a snake coiled. Well, that's part of that, but that serpent god wasn't wasn't a god that was a snake in that sense. It was wisdom. It represented wisdom. You have to understand the symbology of things. There again, we go back to if you're trying to understand what people were writing about and what their concepts were, like Quetzalcoatl and Popol Vuh and all these things. That's just in Central and in Southern America, South America. And then you look at these serpent mounds all over the world. Everyone's like, well, they worshipped a snake. No, that snake what meant wisdom, meant the light of the world, the universe. So when you look at things from the perspective of not today and the obvious, it's just a snake, because you're taking the symbolism and you're putting it and applying it to it's a snake, it's a serpent, therefore it's the devil. Because when a certain group of people translated or tried to change the history of this planet, they made all gods that were of wisdom evil from that point on. Thoth himself, the Atlantean, was referred to with a bird head, and everyone said, yeah, they were cutting off humans' bodies and they were putting animal heads on these people. No, the animal head was a hooty bird that was put onto to Thoth's head, and the hooty bird was that of wisdom. So they were saying that Thoth was ultimate wisdom, and that's why he had a bird head. The hooty bird was synonymous at that time with that. The same thing when you look at the so-called Anunnaki, and they have wings on their back, or any people in history that are depicted with wings. It didn't mean that they actually had wings and they were flying around with wings on their butterfly wings on their back, or dragonfly wings on their back, or angel wings on their back. It meant they had the ability to fly. So when you look at the symbology at the time, what they were depicting, not the physicality. Again, your perception determines your reality. Those who look for it or seek it will not find it. So if you're looking in the flesh and you're taking things at face value, then you're going, well, yeah, obviously that those Egyptian characters had animal heads. And that was just a scientific experiment by aliens, where they were taking a human body and putting and transplanting it and putting animal heads on there, and they were running around as slaves or running around as personal guard. And these other ones came down to Earth because in a spaceship, yet they could fly, and they had wings on their back. That can't be further from the truth. It is completely folly and wrong, and it is asinine to even say that those things were a reality, because they were not. Okay. So the reality was they were using symbology, because when you hear the concept of a picture is worth 1,000 words, everyone back then understood what that symbology meant, the same way you understand what the news is talking about when they're showing you images on the screen of people on their cell phones, people sitting there on their cell phones. Okay, you know that that's a cell phone because you have that knowledge. 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, people aren't going to know what that cell phone is. So what are they going to do? They're going to make up something. Some people are going to make up something as to what that is that they're holding in their hand. Do you see? So if we depicted ourselves flying in a jet plane today and drew a jet plane, that makes perfect sense to us today. You take that backwards in time, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, they do not understand the concept. You take it forward in time to when something replaces that. If someone knows their history properly, they're going to go, that was an aircraft that people flew in. If they don't, and they don't understand that, what are they going to do to try and figure out what that device is? So the same goes for people that are more primitive. When they see somebody, go backwards in time to people who saw someone flying in an aircraft who came down and landed. Then they would say they in which they did in most cultures around the world, they were flying inside of a dragon. Okay, that flying dragon concept goes from Egypt to South America to the Orient. Okay, so all around the world. They said that these different gods were flying in a dragon. So what were they really doing? Were they just humans that were technologically more advanced that came from another planet? That's the contention of people in the ancient aliens field, that they looked at that same thing and said that concept's wrong. It had to have been technology that they didn't understand. The closest thing that they could come to it was a dragon that they had a myth of, that it was something that flew, that shot fire out of its mouth. Okay, so if you turn a dragon around backwards and have it shoot fire out of its mouth and fly backwards because of the fire, then the dragon in the frozen pose, like the Jesus Christ pose, looks like an aircraft that we have today. If you look at our jet fighter, in all the jet fighters that are there at night, you can see the flame that comes out of the tail. It looks exactly like the dragon that they talked about. So was that us from the future, that we went back in time? A lot of people believe that. We don't know the answer to that, but we do know that they didn't actually have dragons that they were flying on or in. But then again, some people said that they actually had real dragons. So did they actually have dragons? And it's not the concept of our aircraft that we think it is, and it wasn't aliens, that it was actually somebody riding dragons. It is just as likely that that is the case, truly, as it is that they were some more technologically advanced alien that came from another planet that came down here. Okay, because the truth is, when you look at it, you see that. But here they're talking about the cyclical nature now of the universe itself, and the concept, let me get back on point, the concept of the cyclical nature in nature, or the cyclical nature of the dual aspect of spirituality and physicality, that Hermes actually understood, or understood more importantly. And at this point, he's talking to the Word of God. He's talking to the teacher, the chronicle of God, and looking for, I believe here, looking for veneration, of what his concept.
For the divine is the entire combination of cosmic influence renewed by nature, and nature has been established in the divine. 4. A discourse of Hermes to Tat, the mixing bowl or the monad. Since the craftsman made the whole cosmos by reasoned speech, not by hand, you should conceive of him as present, as always existing, as having made all things, as the one and only, and as having crafted by his own will the things that are. For this is his body, neither tangible nor visible, nor measurable nor dimensional, nor like any other body. It is not fire, nor water, nor air, nor spirit, yet all things come from it. Because he is good, it was not for himself alone that he wished to make this offering, and to adorn the earth. So he sent the man below, an adornment of the divine body, mortal life from life immortal. And if the cosmos prevailed over living things as something ever living, the man prevailed even over the cosmos through reason and mind. The man became a spectator of God's work. He looked at it in astonishment and recognized its maker. God shared reason among all people, O Tat, but not mind, though he begrudged it to none. Grudging envy comes not from on high, it forms below in the souls of people who do not possess mind.
See, so here's the concept that on its face may seem a little third dimensional in its nature, but it's not. Here is Hermes understanding, or understanding, more importantly, the concept of this matrix being a test, where God created this place and shared this place with the humans that were created here, but didn't initially share the mind or the spiritual realm that is coexisting at the same time here. Why? We'll see if Hermes understands that it is a test, that you're supposed to, as a child soul, as a young spirit, you're supposed to realize the spiritual and then move yourself out of the physical plane into the spiritual. And this is what he's inferring here. Let's see if he continues and actually overtly says that that is the case here, but he's on to the nature of the beast, which is the physicality, that in this place you're born here and you're veiled and you don't remember that you are in fact a spirit, not just a soul, that you are immortal and that you are part of the creator, not just part of the creation. Okay. And he's on to the concept. Let's continue and see how far Hermes goes with this line of thinking.
For what reason, then, did God not share mind with all of them, my father?
A place where tradition, innovation, and excitement blend perfectly, Guadalajara is an experience of...
He wanted it put between souls, my child, as a prize for them to contest. And where did he put it? He filled a great mixing bowl with it and sent it below, appointing a herald whom he commanded to make the following proclamation to human hearts. Immerse yourself in the mixing bowl if your heart has the strength, if it believes you will rise up again to the one who sent the mixing bowl below.
See, so here Hermes doesn't understand or understand exactly what's going on here and asks the question, and now is getting the answer. Okay, so I like the concept of the mixing bowl, and the reason for the concept of the mixing bowl is, if those of you who are aware of the ascension and downloads, it comes into your mind like a mixing bowl. It comes into your mind like a whirlwind spinning around you that you have to then figure out and discern. And so it literally comes at you like a crazy whirlwind. Okay. So, yeah, right? Shelley said, we will rise up. Yes, each one of us will in our time, and this entire societal structure will in its time as well. That is the function of this place. The function of this place is to teach us that is what we are supposed to do. So you're either in service to self, in which case you're going to live in the flesh and you don't care about the ascension because you're about power, money, fame, clicks, likes, all of that, controlling people, getting things from people in the physicality, or you're in service to others, in which case you then are seeking knowledge, learning love, knowledge, respect, all of these things. And you will then start rising up in your ascension and start moving back towards the creator. And that is the function of this place. Ultimately, you have to serve as one or the other of those influences on this place, either being in service to self and being evil, or being in service to others and being good. And you will then start learning the concept of the spirit, of God, of the creator, and how to find your way back to the creator through the downloads. So here, if you are of a strong enough will or brave enough to withstand or to take part in the mixing bowl, because it's hard and it's difficult, it's far more difficult than living in the flesh. And because that whirlwind, that is that roller coaster ride, that is the knowledge that you will gain from, and how hard it is to learn to be in service to others and to stay on that path is hard. And when you consider that it only takes 51% of you only have to be 51% good and in service to others to be able to graduate. But on the other end of the spectrum, to be evil and graduate, you have to be 95% evil. So it is as hard for people who are in service to others to only make 1% past the 50% mark as it is for evil people to go all the way to 95%. So it, in some sense, it's easier for them, obviously, to become very evil than it is. It's far harder for people in service to others. And that's why you only takes 51%. It's not equal. You don't have to go 95% good to graduate. You only have to go 51%, 1% over, halfway, neutral. That's how hard that 1% is. Do you see? So that mixing bowl that he's talking about here is that whirlwind that is something that you have to jump into. And while it's spinning you round and around and around, you have to try and figure it all out. And it's a whirlwind. And so you have to like grasp at nothingness and realize that it's not a physical thing for you to do, that it's a spiritual thing. And once you give into the universe and give into the spiritual, instead of living in the physicality, so you give away the soul for the spirit, for the mind, for that which is spiritual, the upper three chakras. Then once you do that, the concept changes in you and your perception changes, and that whirlwind all of a sudden becomes that spiral, and you find that that spiral has a definite pattern. But on its surface, when you first see it, it seems like it doesn't have a pattern, and it's very scary. But once you start to realize that it is in fact 3, 6, and 9, it is in fact a closed circuit, and that spiral, it doesn't spiral out on forever in the universe. You're not going to spin all the way out into the universe and become nothingness, that it is actually a closed circuit, and all you have to do is ride that wave and allow it to happen. Then you'll find that the knowledge that's there becomes very easy to discern. However, the hardest thing you're going to do is quiet the mind, quiet the ego, and then surrender to the universe and allow that to not scare you, not thinking this is a tornado or a hurricane and it's going to batter me and destroy me. You have to realize that the universe is not that it's a wave that you're going to ride like a surfer, that's going to be going in that spiral motion, and that it's going to be going perpetually upward until it's going perpetually inward at the same time, and that you become one, right? So the spiral, yes. Okay. So that concept is what's being discussed here, or given to Hermes. Let's see how far we go with that.
If it recognizes the purpose of your coming to be. All those who heeded the proclamation and immersed themselves in mind participated in knowledge and became perfect people because they received mind. But those who missed the point of the proclamation are people of reason, because they did not receive the gift of mind as well and do not know the purpose or the agents of their coming to be.
See, so now remember that the gift of mind, thousands of years ago, I think, therefore I am, mind meant spirit, meant immortality, meant non-physical, astral. Okay, so that literally is what that word meant to them back then in this context. However, if you just read this and didn't understand that, you would be like, wait a minute, don't we say today I'm not the thinking mind? Do you see? We've changed the concept and learned the concept of spirituality, and would say that instead of the mind. So we in the modern day associate the mind, the thinking mind, with the ego. We don't use the word mind to describe spirit, but they did back then. So there's a perfect example right there in that one word alone, that if you don't understand the concept of what that word meant 4,500 years ago, you would be confused when you read this, thinking, wait, today they're telling me I am not the mind. Why is it that here they're saying I am the mind? Because that meant something different 4,500 years ago than it does today. Okay, so you have to learn what things meant at the time of the author writing the whatever, the scroll, the book, whatever it is, at the time, if it's not been written today. Even though this has been written today, this is a translation of something that was written thousands of years ago. And all the footnotes were removed for this video because the footnotes probably would have described exactly what I'm telling you. So I'm giving you footnotes in the exact same way that the author of this book probably gave, but they were removed all of that so that this would just be the context that you see here, for the purpose of people doing like I'm doing, to help you to understand that. Or you could buy the book and read it and see what that person who wrote it, what their footnotes were, if they described what the word mind and the concept of what that meant at the time, as opposed to now.
These people have sensations much like those of unreasoning animals, and since their temperament is willful and angry, they feel no awe of things.
So yes, Penny. So it's our spirit, because the soul in their context is the physical body. So we say soul now, referring to most of the time spirit, most of the time disembodied, that which is internal. Oh, I said Denise, and I said Penny. It was Denise. I'm sorry, Denise, that you were asking that question. So literally, our concept of soul today has now changed from their concept. Their concept of soul meant physical body, and their concept of the word mind meant the spirit, that which is immortal. Okay, so those two words have changed in the last 4,000 years. in what we have as the concept of what those mean, or the context of what those words mean. So there's where you get your lost in translation. Excuse me. Where you get people that read it, if they don't have the knowledge to know, I need to understand what they meant then by these words, not what these words mean now. There are some words that you have to really look at in a scientific way. So when you're reading scriptures or any kind of scroll or any kind of history that was written, more than 100 years ago, you have to actually understand the verbiage they were using in the context they were using it in at the time to understand what they meant by what they were saying or what they wrote. All right, let's continue here. And now my computer is freezing and I can't go back over to YouTube. And I don't know why. So I don't know if I'm frozen and you guys can't hear me, but I can't actually change. I don't know why I'm frozen, but I'm frozen. So hopefully I'm still on the air and not frozen. I'm going to have to look to see if I'm on the air still, because I can't get my mouse to change. Let me see if I can do it with my finger. No, my computer is frozen. I might be off the air right now. So I'm going to have to reboot, I think. I apologize to you guys if that's the case and you can't hear me. If you can hear me, I'm frozen here and I'm not sure what's going on because my mouse is moving, but it's not being able to change the windows that are open. So I do apologize for that. I'll have to see what's going on here. I may have to go off the air really quickly and come back on the air. So you guys are hearing me. Okay. So I just checked and you guys are actually hearing me, but for some reason, let me unplug my mouse and plug it back in and see if it'll change. No, it's still not working. So my computer is frozen here and I'm not sure why. I'm going to refresh my screen. I can't even do that. All right, guys, I'm going to have to, let me jump on, see if I can jump on the app, on StreamYard on my cell phone. Because if I can do that, I can just continue running things from that perspective, and then close the windows out and reboot to jump in. Otherwise, I'll have to do that. Wait a minute. Now it's
We're Phoenix Energy, a family-owned oil company focused on unleashing American oil from North Dakota and Montana.
Okay, now
for the word was of the same substance.
I apologize for that. It was frozen for a minute until it did that on its own. So I apologize. Now I'm back and I have control of my computer. My computer was frozen there for a second. Don't know what was going on. So hopefully I'm still live now. I'll double check that to make sure that I'm still live. Okay, hold on. Let me go ahead and start this then. And you guys let me know how long, if there was anything that missed. It looked like there wasn't. It's just I didn't have any control of my computer for whatever reason.
The weighty elements of nature were left behind, bereft of reason, so as to be mere matter. The craftsman mind, together with the word, encompassing the circles and whirling them about with a rush, turned his craftworks about, letting them turn from an endless beginning to a limitless end, for it starts where it stops. Revolving as mind wished them to, the circles brought forth from the weighty elements.
Yeah, I couldn't even read the chat, guys, on my computer. I had to jump on my cell phone right then and look at it to find out I was still on the air. So I couldn't even read that you guys were saying that you could hear me. But that's good that you guys could still hear me. But for whatever reason, yeah, I don't know if I was getting too much into it, and because my latency was fine. Just for whatever reason, right then my computer literally froze the controls. I couldn't get it to do anything by touching my screen or using my mouse. I couldn't get it to do anything. And then all of a sudden the screen blacked out again. And then when it came back, it went to the commercial by itself. And then once the commercial started, I had back control. So I'm not sure what happened there. I'm probably talking too much about reality and I'm getting shadow banned. I'm not quite sure if that's what's happening. But we're back. So let's continue. All right.
Living things without reason, for they no longer kept the word with them. And the air brought forth winged things, the water things that swim. Earth and water had been separated from one another as mind wished, and earth brought forth from herself the living things that she held within, four-footed beasts and crawling things, wild animals and tame. Mind, the father of all who is life and light, gave birth to a man like himself, whom he...
Yeah, see, what it did was it knocked the YouTube out of full screen and turned off the closed captions. I just realized that and turned them back on. Right? Isn't that crazy? All right. So yeah, I don't know what was going on there. Let's continue.
Loved as his own child. The man was most fair. He had the Father's image, and God, who was really in love with his own form, bestowed on him all his craftworks. And after the man had observed what the craftsman had created with the Father's help, he also wished to make some craftwork, and the Father agreed to this. Entering the craftsman's sphere, where he was to have all authority, the man observed his brother's craftworks. The governors loved the man, and each gave a share of his own order.
Right. See, so now we're looking at the creation again, and we're looking at the concept of, remember, the governors are the chakras. Okay. So the governors loved the man, loved the human, and each gave a share of its order, right? Its own order learning. So literally, that is the governing the arcana, the major arcana that rule us, the 7 chakras. Okay. And that rules our personality. And how we balance those chakras determines who we are. Our thought process, the food we eat, the practices that we have in taking care of ourselves and physically and spiritually determine our reality. And that also, if we're paying attention to those major arcana, the 7 chakras, and we balance those properly in the way that it is set down in all of these spiritual practices from around the world, the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Book of Moses, these writings, Thoth, the Atlantean writings from Thoth, the concepts of the same, literally the chakras. So we're looking at the ancient Chinese and Japanese ways, even the same concept in the Viking ways. Every race of beings on this earth have their version and explanation of the exact same concept. The one thing that is constant in all religions is the ascension and the chakras. They are just explained in a different way in all religions. The tree of life is universal. The chakras are universal. The balancing of those chakras are universal. They're just described to the people of the area, Egypt or the Africa or Asia or Europe or Australia or Alaska. It is described at the time in words that they understand and the concepts that they understand, but it's still a constant. It's still described the same way. Theologians don't talk about that. They always do comparative religion, comparative spirituality, but they never look at the underlying thing that is the common denominator, and that is this information that is in here. And there are people who knew that, because this information, when it was blatant like this and obvious, was removed by people who were self-serving and didn't want people to find this information. And they were killing people over it for thousands of years and trying to eradicate this information from the face of the earth to control people. They're doing it on purpose, have been and did do it on purpose. Okay? So you have to realize that all of this ties in together, right? And if you are interested in figuring out some of that and the information that I'm talking about right now, you can buy my book and you can read about it, because I talk about that in my book, in exactly what's going on here and what's going and what this is all about in my book, The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. So this is a perfect time to pay the bills. So let's pause right here for the commercial for my book.
What is the reality about reality? Returning to the Old Ways. It is a comprehensive book about what is really going on here on this planet. It talks about the true spirituality that the controllers who think they own this planet have been keeping from you for thousands of years. It explains to you the knowledge that you gain from the universe itself when you live the way the prophets of the world throughout time told us how to live. Eat right, meditate, take care of yourself, treat others right. All the things they originally told us to do, but the controllers have removed from right in front of our eyes. The way to ascend to heaven. The reality about reality. Returning to the old ways. On sale worldwide, online now.
Right? So Penny said water, Leo, right? So the concept of all of this is you have to realize that all of the chakras and all of the spiral and all of the archetypes in the universe works on everything, in everything. It is in everything. Okay. So water as well, right? Water is life. Water is the life of the earth. So is the sun. So the sun's rays is the life of the earth. Without water, we don't have oxygen. Without the sun's rays, we don't have oxygen. We don't have life. So we don't have growth in plants for food for us if we don't have water and we don't have light to create the plants for the plants to grow. So the plants need the light from the sun and they need the water from the planet to grow. We eat that food. We drink the water. We also are mostly water. So you have to realize that concept is that everything it's a symbiotic relationship. Everything it only exists because everything else exists. And this is the concept of what Hermes was saying earlier. And all of that is because of the creator. All right, let's continue.
Learning well their essence and sharing in their nature, the man wished to break through the circumference of the circles to observe the rule of the one given power over the fire.
Powerball is trying to censor this video before more people discover the loophole that has already helped.
Having all authority over the cosmos of mortals and unreasoning animals.
Right, Penny, right? You're right. Actually, I took a drink of water after I cleared my throat just then. That's funny. She said, no, water, drink water, Leo. You need water. Yeah, because my throat, right? That's hilarious. But everything that played into what I was talking about. So it was a perfect example. Good timing, because I did just take a drink of water because of that. I was like, excuse me. And then took a drink of water. That's funny. All right, let's continue.
The man broke through the vault and stooped to look through the cosmic framework, thus displaying to lower nature the fair form of God. Nature smiled for love when she saw him whose fairness brings no surfeit, and who holds in himself all the energy of the governors and the form of God.
Okay, so again, the earth being feminine, nature being feminine, because nurture, we get that from nature, okay? So nurturing, nature, to love, right? So you have to realize the concept of these things once again. So that's why we call the earth Mother Earth to this day, because it is the life giver, that which creates life. The feminine, the love, the female body creates life. So life is created out of the bosom of the body of the earth. And the life giver or the life bringer is the light. So here's the same concept again, the sun raining down light on the earth and giving life to the foliage, the plants, and all of that, impregnating the goddess with life. So when people are worshiping the sun, people are like, oh yeah, they just worship the sun. That's, the star Sol that we have up there. That's all they're worshiping. The concept of what they were doing was they were seeing that as a below, so above, as within, so without. They were understanding the concept of the sun, the light being that which was creating or allowing the earth to then impregnating the earth and in sperminating the earth and allowing the earth to then gestate and create life. Masculine, sun, feminine, earth, light, and earth. So you see, earth and water, the concept that Xerxes gave to Leonidas, that he was there for earth and water because he was a god on earth, Xerxes, and that Leonidas needed to kneel before him and give him earth and water, meaning the same concept of I am your god. So you, by giving Xerxes earth and water, you were acknowledging that Xerxes was a god on earth, that he was God, because they called him the God King. He was telling the world he was a god. And Leonidas didn't buy it. And Leonidas was like, no, we're going to prove that this god can bleed because he's just a man. He sacrificed his life for it, but he proved it. And then the Greeks then realized that he wasn't a god, he was just a man. And then they set out to take over the world because they went after Xerxes and went after his land, and they ended up taking over the whole world because they pissed him off by killing Leonidas. Let's continue.
For in the water she saw the shape of the man's fairest form, and upon the earth its shadow. When the man saw in the water the form like himself, as it was in nature, he loved it, and wished to inhabit it. Wish and action came in the same moment, and he inhabited the unreasoning form. Nature took hold of her beloved, hugged him all about, and embraced him, for they were lovers. Because of this, unlike any other living thing on earth, mankind is twofold, in the body mortal, but immortal in the essential man. Even though he is immortal and has authority over all things, mankind is affected by mortality because he is subject to fate. Thus, although man is above the cosmic framework, he became a slave within it. He is androgyne because he comes from an androgyne father, and he never sleeps because he comes from one who is sleepless. Yet love and sleep are his masters. And after this, O my mind, I love the word also. Poimandres said, this is the mystery that has been kept hidden until this very day. When nature made love with the man, she bore a wonder most wondrous. In him he had the nature of the cosmic framework of the seven, who are made of fire and spirit, as I told you, and without delay nature at once gave birth to 7 men, androgyne and exalted, whose natures were like those of the 7 governors. And after this, O Poimandres, now I have come into a great longing, and I yearn to hear, so do not digress. And Poimandres said, be silent. I have not yet unfolded to you the first discourse.
Your smile matters, but so does your bank account. With Aspen Dental, you don't have to choose.
As you see, I am silent, said I. As I said then, the birth of the 7 was as follows. Earth was the female, water did the fertilizing, fire was the maturing force. Nature took spirit from the ether and brought forth bodies in the shape of the man.
Right, so fire being light, correct? Right, so fire or light from the sun, just the concept of what I was saying in the germination of the landscape with water and fire. All right, let's continue.
From life and light, the man became soul and mind.
So in some of the scrolls, they talk about the sons of fire and the sons of light. I'm not exactly sure but they were in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We'll get to those eventually as time goes on. We'll get to those scrolls. So remember this, because if you're still with me at that time later on in the future, I'll be referencing this particular part in this book when we get there on those scrolls. And I'll say, remember when we were talking about that, right? Fire, back then the concept of fire meant light. The light meant the creation of the world or the creator. So the fire, the sun, which is on fire, and they understood that concept, and that fire burns and also renews. So when you have a forest fire or whatever, it burns everything. And out of the ashes, there's your phoenix. Out of my wife, if she were here right now, would love this when I'm talking about this. The fire, the phoenix, through the phoenix being on fire and then dying, it comes from out of the ashes, comes the rebirth of the phoenix. Okay, so that is the conceptual cyclical nature of the universe, that that fire begets the creation. So you have fire also destroying to create. So that's the cleansing. You cleanse by fire or light. So again, that is cleansing in God, cleansing in the creation of the universe or in the creator.
From life came soul, from light came mind, and all things in the cosmos of the senses remained thus until a cycle ended and kinds of things began to be. Hear the rest, the word you yearn to hear. When the cycle was completed, the bond among all things was sundered by the counsel of God. All living things which had been androgyne were sundered into two parts, humans along with them, and part of them became male, part likewise female.
See, so again, androgyne meaning androgynous, that's where we get that word from, right? So when they were neither male nor female, but both, then they were separated, right? And each of them became part male and part female, likewise part of the whole, but separated into masculine and feminine.
But God immediately spoke a holy speech. Increase in increasing, and multiply in multitude, all you creatures and craftworks, and let him who is mindful recognize that he is immortal.
Okay, so here, God is saying that you are, that as below, so above. As above, so below. That you are now separated, but you are a part of the creation. You are the creator. Multiply, meaning like nature now in this place is separated into masculine and feminine. Everything. There is a masculine and feminine, and the masculine has to pollinate the feminine in some way. Plants need animals to do that. You have a masculine a plant and a feminine plant, and then you have bees that will go and get the nectar from the masculine plant and get the pollen on their feet, and then go get the nectar from the feminine plants, and their feet touch the plant and germinate it with the pollen from the masculine, and it pollinates the plant. That happens throughout nature. We humans don't have a worker bee. We are the animals who are second dimensional. We then are driven by nature to we're animals where you have the woman go into heat, and the female goes into heat, and then she's like crazy, and all the men know it, and they can smell her, and they're driven to have sex with her. The same concept actually happens with humans. We just don't realize it as much as they do, because we have the ability, because we're self-aware, we have the ability to not, that we can resist that. So we don't only, you know what I mean? So that we're not bound by the nature of nature is once a year in springtime, all of nature breeds, whereas humans can do it every month because women are fertile every month, and we can do it. So we can choose when we want to have children a little bit more, where because we have free will, because we're self-aware, we have free will. So we have the opportunity to do it when we want to, not when we're only driven to. Do you see?
That desire is the cause of death, and let him recognize all that exists. After God said this, Providence, through fate and through the cosmic framework, caused acts of intercourse and set in
They actually, if you look at an arborist, Denise said, posed the question, I'll read it for those of you who are on the MP3 broadcast. I wonder how we can tell what gender trees, rocks have, just thinking. So rocks are created by the movement of the mantle, by the movement of things that are happening. But trees and plants, there's a distinctive masculine and feminine to the nature of nature. So when you get to a difference between a one-dimensional and a two-dimensional object, rock being a one-dimensional object, dirt being one-dimensional, and then you can move to a second-dimensional being, you then have sexes like that. So trees, plants, they're second-dimensional. Animals, dogs, cats, birds, they're second dimensional. So they then are have the ability to breed, whereas one dimensional things don't. And some plants don't, but they get assistance because of the nature of nature, and that's another concept. But if you look at people that are arborists or horticulturists, they have studied that, and they can tell by looking at a plant whether it's a male or female, because they've learned to tell the difference. So I don't know 100% because I'm not a horticulturalist or an arborist, but I remember talking to them and they were, arborists were explaining to me the difference in trees, and I was really, there's men and masculine and feminine. Yeah, and I'm like, well, that goes to show the way the universe is, that it should be that way. So there is a way of telling, because people who study them know that the masculine and feminine plants and trees and whatnot.
Brain acts of birth, and all things were multiplied according to kind. The one who recognized himself attained the chosen good, but the one who loved the body that came from the error of desire goes on in darkness, errant, suffering sensibly the effects of death. Those who lack knowledge, what great wrong have they done, I asked, that they should be deprived of immortality? You behave like a person who has not given thought to what he has heard. Did I not tell you to think? I am thinking. I remember, and I am grateful as well. If you have understood, tell me, why do they deserve death who are in death? Because what first gives rise to each person's body is the hateful darkness, from which comes the watery nature, from which the body was constituted in the sensible cosmos, from which death drinks. Truly you have understood. But why is it that he who has understood himself advances toward God, as God's discourse has it?
For the best prices on healthy favorites, shop Vitacost.com. Vitacost is our go-to for everything.
Because, I said, the Father of all things was constituted of light and life, and from him the man came to be. You say your speech well. Life and light are God and Father, from whom the man came to be. So if you learn that you are from light and life, and that you happen to come from them, you shall advance to life once again. This is what Poimandres said.
See, so that's the cycle of life and the cyclical nature, right? So the concept, the Egyptian concept, would be the having the right spell to be able to then get into heaven, knowing the names of the guardians of the gates, to be able to tell them what they need to know so that you can get into heaven. And then now eventually we'll do the Egyptian Book of the Dead as well. And I'm writing about that currently in the second book that I'm writing, which is the guardians of the gates are the seven chakras, the seven gods that rule those gates. So the concept there is also in the Hermes, talking about them being gods, and here them talking about being the rulers that govern these concepts. So here again is the same, and a light in life and fire was light back then, whereas now we have the concept of light not necessarily being fire. To them, they didn't have light bulbs like we have now. They had fire, right? They were using candles and they were using oil lamps. So that was always fire. So light to them literally meant fire until we created the incandescent light bulb and then the fluorescent light bulb. Before that, we had fire only on this earth. So we've only had light in the concept of what we call it today for only about 100 years. Okay. Maybe a little bit less than that, about 100 years, I guess, maybe at the most 120 years or so. Before that, we didn't have light bulbs. It was fire. So light literally meant fire.
But tell me again, I asked, how shall I advance to life, O my mind? For God says, let the person who is mindful recognize himself. All people have mind, do they not? Hold your tongue, fellow. Enough talk. I myself, the mind, am present to the blessed and good and pure and merciful, to the reverent, and my presence becomes a help. They quickly recognize everything, and they propitiate the Father lovingly and give thanks, praising and singing hymns affectionately and in the order appropriate to him. Before giving up the body to its proper death, they loathe the senses, for they see their effects. Or rather, I, the mind, will not permit the effects of the body to strike and work their results on them. As gatekeeper, I will refuse entry to the evil and shameful effects, cutting off the anxieties that come from them.
Okay, so here we see as the gatekeeper, here's that concept again, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, where you have gatekeepers. Okay, so here is I as the gatekeeper will cut these people who are evil off. So here you see the same concept being told that if you don't balance your chakras the proper way, you will not ascend to heaven. So you cannot be in service to self and ascend to heaven. You only can ascend to heaven by being in service to others. So here's that same concept being told to someone who was speaking to either God or the voice of God. Okay, so this is now a Greek who was doing that. So if you look at the Hebrews, Moses spoke to God and God told him the same concept. Now you have a Greek person thousands of years later talking to God and God telling the same concept. So when you look at the different religions around the world, the different spiritual practices around the world, at different times, in different places, by different people who claim to have been talking to the God creator of the universe, or at the very least, one of his angels or the voice of God, the concept has always been the same. And this has been the concept. If you're living in the flesh, you do not get to go to heaven. If you're living in the spirit, you get to go to heaven. If you're self-serving, you're stuck on earth. If you're not self-serving and you're in service to others, you get to graduate. It is the nature of the beast here. It is the nature of nature. It is what this place is. It is a school. It is a college. And it is for you to learn this, live this, and then escape this. So you either do it or you don't. It's pass-fail.
But from these I remain distant. The thoughtless and evil and wicked and envious and greedy and violent and irreverent, giving way to the avenging demon who wounds the evil person, assailing him.
Thank you, Peter. I wasn't sure of the exact date, right? So Peter put up the light bulb came to being in 1879 when Thomas Edison gave it to the world. 1879, the first incandescent light bulb. Okay, so there you go. So literally prior to 1879 and the incandescent light bulb, light was fire. The concept of light meant fire for all of time until that date. And even then it's actually on fire. You just don't realize it. That's why it's hot. So the incandescent light bulb, the filament in there is glowing with heat and it is illuminated. Okay. So you literally have to realize that. So it's still fire, it's still friction, it's still heat. But we say light, right? So when God said, "Let there be light" in the old scriptures, it meant let there be fire. Okay, not just light. So the concept of light has changed, and there's another thing that would lose in translation because we see fire and light as two different things now, because we have a distinction between the two. But you can take that light bulb, if you took the cover off the light bulb and just had that filament, and you can catch things on fire with that filament because it's in fact glowing red hot. It's on fire. You just don't know it but that's why it burns your hand when you touch it. Okay. Because it's hot, because there's friction. There's still fire there. But we have our concept of the words are separate, and we don't see them as the same when you say light and fire. But back then it literally meant that because they didn't have light the way we have it today. It doesn't mean that it's not hot and it's not going to burn you, because it is. It's still fire.
Sensibly with the piercing fire, and thus arming him the better for lawless deeds, so that greater vengeance may befall him. Such a person does not cease longing after insatiable appetite, struggling in the darkness without satisfaction. This tortures him and makes the fire grow upon him all the more. You have taught.
And the concept that they're talking about here, struggling in the darkness, the opposite of light in the light, is being veiled, illuminated, light, fire, knowledge. Okay. So again, the concept here is showing you that if you're struggling in darkness, that means you're veiled. Doesn't mean that you can't see, but you can't. Spiritually, you're not seeing. So you're stuck in the flesh here. Okay. So here again, that concept is being told to you that the illumination is lighting like Jesus is the light of the world, or God is the light of the world. The light within you, that would be the Christ within. Okay, the light within you, your illumination. Illumination means knowledge. It means you're learning something. Okay, so if you're learning something, you're learning what? Wisdom. When you're learning something, it's wisdom. So you gain wisdom, a certain wisdom, and the knowledge of how to ascend when you start doing that in service to others. If you're in service to self, you don't get that knowledge. You can't do that. You are stuck in darkness. When you are away from the creator of the universe, the further away from the creator of the universe you are, the further away from the light you are, the more you're in darkness. That is living in the flesh. That is the concept that's being told to you, and here being told to you. Let's continue.
Me all things well, O mind, just as I wanted. But tell me again about the way up. Tell me how it happens. To this, Poimandres said, first, in releasing the material body, you give the body itself over to alteration, and the form that you used to have vanishes. To the demon, you give over your temperament, now inactive.
Okay, so here this is the transcendence of the physical body to the spiritual, the physical mind to the spiritual mind. Okay, this is what we're talking about. So you give over the temperance to the demon. You do not feed that demon. You do not become self-serving. You become in service to others. And by doing so, you become more peaceful. You become less aggressive, and you're no longer living in the flesh. You start living in the spirit. This is what the concept is that's being told to you right here.
The body's senses rise up and flow back to their particular sources, becoming separate parts and mingling again with the energies. And feeling and longing go on toward irrational nature. Thence the human being rushes up through the cosmic framework, at the first zone surrendering the energy of increase and decrease, at the second evil machination, a device now inactive.
Okay, so now we're looking at the chakras, first and second chakra, right?
At the third, the illusion of longing, now inactive. At the fourth, the ruler's arrogance, now freed of excess.
Okay, so gluttony. So now you're at the heart chakra. Okay, so now if you are in service, this is the only chakra that is shared by both, in service to self and in service to others. So you still have, so the inactive at the fourth, the ruler of arrogance, right, now freed of excess. So at this point, here's the transformation will happen to you, because it is in the heart chakra that the decision is made. You're either in love with yourself, so the heart chakra is being used to love yourself, or you're in love with others, or you have love for others, in which case you're then moving into the higher realms and the upper three chakras. So the concept here is the change happens in the heart, right? You have a change of heart. Have you heard that term? You have a change of heart. You've gone from aggression, hatred, being in love with yourself, to peaceful, nurturing nature, in love with others, love for others. That is where the choice is made. The choice is made in the heart. That is why the yin and the yang is the Vesica Pisces. The yin and the yang, you have the light, that little teeny circle of light in the darkness, and you have that little teeny circle of darkness in the light. That is when you take the yin and yang and you superimpose them so the light and the dark are in the same spot, you'll find that that's the heart chakra that literally superimposes over the human body if you turn it upright. It is the Vesica Pisces. The heart chakra rules the upper and the lower, because it is from the heart that we learn to love and learn to create. We're either loving ourselves or we're loving others. It's the only chakra that is shared fully by people either in the flesh or in the spirit. And this is what is being talked about right here.
At the fifth, unholy presumption and daring recklessness. At the sixth, the evil impulses that come from wealth, now inactive. And at the seventh zone, the deceit that lies in ambush.
Okay, so those people who are in service to self use the upper three chakras, but only in the negative light. So when you then change your ways and change your heart, those things are no longer active, because you're now starting to activate things in a different way, which is in service to others. Okay, and that is when you start changing and getting different information, that different downloads that will help you rise up and actually be able to graduate and move up and eventually go back to the creator.
And then, stripped of the effects of the cosmic framework, the human enters the region of the Ogdode. He has his own proper power, and along with the blessed he hymns the Father. Those present...
Okay, so the Ogdode is the non-physical plane. That is the spiritual plane. Okay, that is just the word that meant that concept back in the time of Hermes. Okay, so so you have to realize that that's a Greek word, that the concept of that word meant non-physical. We talked about that earlier. That was given in the beginning in the explanation of the definition. The Ogdode means non-physical, means spiritual plane, spiritual body. Okay, let's go. Let's continue.
There rejoice together in his presence, and having become like his companions, he also hears certain powers that exist beyond the Ogdoaic region, and hymn God with sweet voice.
Watch what eggs do to your brain. Take a look at these 2 brain scans.
They rise up to the Father in order and surrender themselves to the powers, and, having become powers, they enter into God. This is the final good for those who have received knowledge, to be made God.
Do you see? So the way to heaven is through me. So the way to heaven is you become the creator because you merge back with the creator. You realize that you are the creator. Then you start moving up. You're a co-creator. You're a sub-logos of the logos. And eventually you start rising up and you start joining with the creator. You have to reach up to the creator. You have to become like the creator to merge back with the creator. You can't keep living in the flesh and being self-serving.
Why do you still delay? Having learned all this, should you not become guide to the worthy, so that through you the human race might be saved by God? As he was saying this to me, Poimandres joined with the powers. Then he sent me forth, empowered and instructed on the nature of the universe and on the supreme vision, after I had given thanks to the Father of all and praised him. And I began proclaiming to mankind the beauty of reverence and knowledge. People, earthborn men, you who have surrendered yourselves to drunkenness and sleep and ignorance of God, make yourselves sober and end your drunken sickness, for you are bewitched in unreasoning sleep.
See? So again, if you're eating of the tree of life, living in the flesh, you are drunk with sickness and you're stuck, bewitched with the unreasoning sleep. Again, veiled. You will remain veiled as long as you are in service to self. You will never wake up. You will never ascend. You will always be stuck in this place. They knew this concept. Evil people knew this concept from writings just like this, from writings that were told in all of the spiritual practices that if you did not do these things, you would be stuck here. Then they started taking away the knowledge of how not to do these things, and they encourage you to continue living in the flesh. Power, money, fame, clicks, likes, all of that. They want you to stay living in the flesh. They have imprisoned you by only giving you the knowledge by proxy that you need to stay here, drinking alcohol, sleeping wrongly, eating wrongly, living here for yourself, in the flesh, for power, for money, for fame. Those are the concepts that you're rewarded for. You're not rewarded in any way in this modern society for being spiritual. You're discouraged from being spiritual. Bless you. Sorry, my mother sneezed. You're discouraged from being spiritual, and they took the knowledge of spirituality out and away from you, and it's right here for you to see in all of these scriptures, and it's still in the ones that were left in, the books that were left in all these religions. You just have to see them. You have to have the eyes to see, or the mind to know, or the ears to hear. And they tell you that in those books all around the world all the time. But these are books that I'm going through that they don't want you to know about. Okay, so let's continue here.
When they heard, they gathered round with one accord, and I said, Why have you surrendered yourselves to death, earthborn men, since you have the right to share in immortality? You who have journeyed with error, who have partnered with ignorance, think again. Escape the shadowy light, leave corruption behind, and take a share in immortality. Some of them who had surrendered themselves to the way of death resumed their mocking and withdrew, while those who desired to be taught cast themselves at my feet. Having made them rise, I became guide to my race, teaching them the words, how to be saved and in what manner. And I sowed the words of wisdom among them, and they were nourished from the ambrosial water. When evening came and the sun's light began to disappear entirely, I commanded them to give thanks to God, and when each completed the thanksgiving, he turned to his own bed. Within myself I recorded the kindness of Poimandres, and I was deeply happy, because I was filled with what I wished, for the sleep of my body became sobriety of soul. The closing of my eyes became true vision, my silence became pregnant with good, and the birthing of the word became a progeny of goods. This happened to me because I was receptive of mind, of Poimandres, that is, the word of sovereignty. I have arrived, inspired with the divine breath of truth. Therefore I give praise to God the Father from my soul and with all my might. Holy is God, the Father of all. Holy is God, whose counsel is done by his own powers. Holy is God, who wishes to be known, and is known by his own people. Holy are you, who by the word have constituted all things that are. Holy are you, from whom all nature was born as image. Holy are you, of whom nature has not made a like figure. Holy are you, who are stronger than every power. Holy are you, who surpass every excellence. Holy are you, mightier than praises. You whom we address in silence, the unspeakable, the unsayable, accept pure speech offerings from a heart and soul that reach up to you. Grant my request not to fail in the knowledge that befits our essence. Give me power, and with this gift I shall enlighten those who are in ignorance, brothers of my race, but your sons. Thus I believe and I bear witness. I advance to life and light. Blessed are you, Father. He who is your man wishes to join you in the work of sanctification, since you have provided him all authority.
Okay, and we're going to pause there. Let me write that down so I know exactly where we are here. Right? So we'll pick up, part 2 we'll pick up at this point next week. Okay? So there you have it. There's part 1 of the Hermetic text. Right? So let me turn this off, the overlay off here. Put myself up in full screen here. So there you go. All right, guys. So there is the part 1 of the Hermetic text. Right. So we will continue that, and you'll see as we go further that it's going to continue with this knowledge that has been consistent throughout the universe. It's consistent, on this planet for a long time, but it was taken from all of us. Okay. So let's end there. We'll pick up next Friday. We'll start there, part 2 of the Corpus Hermeticum. All right, guys. I love you guys. Have a great weekend. If you have any questions, think about them. Either ask me in the chat or go and come back next week, and we'll continue with this stuff here. Right. So I love you guys. This has been Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. I'll see you guys next week. Love you guys.